Are you sitting comfortably? Then we'll begin.
10 minutes left. Yeah, but there's still some time. It's not the final score. We need more than the numbers we're given. Show us you live and breathe the game. You're more than a name. That's what we came for. We can bring you more than the score. Every story. Let's take this thing off of the field into the real world away from the numbers.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. There's still time. The AFTN Soccer Show, broadcasting on CITR Radio 101.9 FM from the unceded Musqueam Territory at the University of beautiful British Columbia. I'm Michael McCall.
And I'm Zachary Adam Eisenhammer.
And we're back with yet another packed podcast. And it's a sad one, really, because it's the end of so much football. But we are going to have a lot of things to talk about. And it's the sad time of the year because it's the end of so much stuff. It's the end of the Whitecaps season. For me, kind of the end of my interest in the MLS playoffs as well. It's the end of the CPL season. It's the end of the college season. I've got no commentary coming up until April and no live football apart from VMSL, which I'll now at least get to go out and see some games, but no pro, semi-pro stuff until mid-February maybe, when the Whitecaps are back in CONCACAF Cup action. And it's sad. I don't like this time of year.
I've been enjoying watching the Fraser Valley Men's League with Vancouver FC's U19, so that'll keep going for a while. But I don't know, you might have missed it, but MLS and Apple TV also announced the end of the playoffs this week.
Yes. Yeah, they've had a week of mourning, maybe 2 weeks of mourning before they can get back on the pitch. I mean, some folk call it an international break, but let's call it what it is. We know what MLS and Apple are thinking about that. Yeah, we're going to talk about some MLS playoff action in part 2. Part 1, we're going to look at the end of the Whitecaps playoff run. Part 2, we'll kind of talk a little bit more of Whitecaps. Part 3, we'll talk the CPL Championship game. Fantastic occasion. And then we'll talk about the CPL Commissioner's State of the League address and just a few things coming out of that, including potential expansion cities. So a lot, as always, that we're going to cover over the 4 parts of the show with our usual witty repartee and wonderful musical choices. And in wavelength, I was cock-a-hoop this week, sitting in my hotel room in Squamish. YouTube recommendation came up, a new Goldie Luke and Chain song, and it's about football. And it's like, they're back. So we've got that coming up in wavelength.
The gift that keeps on giving for you.
Oh, fantastic. We'll get into all that football chat shortly. We'll start off, as we always do, by asking Zach, how has your week been? Another busy one, I'm sure.
Well, busy, but a different kind of busy. I think I said it in the last one. Yeah, last weekend I'd been away for work, and this week I was away for work, but it was more of a refreshing endeavor. So I was up in Whistler at a retreat.
I was very close to you. I was like 45 minutes away.
I know. Had I driven myself there, I would have maybe come down to see you. It was really nice because I didn't go last year to this gathering, which was fine and whatever. But yeah, it was just really nice. Got to see some people, eat some wonderful food.
Oh yeah, you sent me a lovely picture of a pie.
Oh yeah, that was really good. The steak, cheese, and bacon. Yeah,
and what I can't remember. It was Peaked Pies, wasn't it?
Of course, yeah. Yes,
because Peaked Pies is in Burnaby Heights as well, just up the road from me. Which I keep walking by thinking I need to go in there, and I've never been.
Yeah,
so,
I've never been to the Burnaby location.
I think that's going to prompt me into going into there. But yeah, that looked nice. Was it snowy up there or?
So when we drove up on Monday, we were like, we got these. Oh yeah, we actually one of our friends up there messaged us and said, yeah, it's been snowing and whatever. So we went up going expecting snow, and we got there, and yeah, there was a little bit of snow on the ground, and the mountains are obviously very nicely white at the top. And
Yes, I had a beautiful mountain view from my hotel room. You opened the curtains in the morning and two big mounds in front of you.
yeah, but that
Love
was
that
it.
when I wake up in the morning.
That was it because by the time we left Thursday morning, everything was even the mountains were were not no longer quite white anymore. But it was cold. It was crisp. It was nice.
Yeah.
Not too much rain.
Squamish got hit with tons of rain on Friday night. It was like torrential. Thankfully, at the end of my commentary, so it's all I could hear while I was watching the Whitecaps game in my room, and it carried on a little bit into Saturday. So much so that my beautiful commentary position, where I could see the mountains, there was no mountains. They had completely disappeared. It was just all
Yeah.
cloud and mist and everything.
I'll save my Thursday evening and Friday escapades for the end of this show, though.
Oh, okay. I mean, I've had a busy week. Amazingly, I still have a voice because I was up in Squamish as
Yeah,
just
no
in
issues with
the
the vocal cords this week.
Actually, no. A
Good.
little bit hoarse first thing in the mornings, but that's my usual. But then as the games went
You
on,
should never have horse for breakfast, Michael.
no, I know I'm not in France. That was the big scandal a few years back that a lot of horse meat was making it into the UK food chain coming over from France and like some of the
Really?
frozen foods. Yeah.
Oh, that's horrible.
Mm. But yeah, I was in Squamish. It was the CCAA Women's Soccer Nationals. That's the Canadian Collegiate Athletics Association. So in the kind of pecking order in Canadian soccer, you've got like U Sports, which is like Canada West, and then underneath that you've got the second tier of the college game, which is the CCAA, and here in BC it's Pac West with the four colleges that's in that, which is Douglas, Capilano, Langara, and Vancouver Island University over in Nanaimo. So this was the first time Capilano University had hosted the women's nationals, and they play out in North Van, but they were hosting it in Squamish, the new FIFA grade pitch that's been laid. It's like top level pitch, and I went on it, and it's beautiful. It's like pitch 5 now, Burnaby Lake. It's really hard to tell it's not grass. The downside, though, is after a downpour, it really holds some water because it's pretty new.
Oh, yeah, that's not great.
Yeah, and the Saturday games, there was a lot of water coming off that turf and pellets coming up everywhere, and yeah,
Did
but
the
it'll
player,
get
what did the
bedded in.
players say? Did the players say anything?
The only players I spoke to after Saturday were the happy ones, so I mean they
Right,
didn't
right.
care about the pitch, but in the build up to it, the players loved it. They
Oh,
thought
good.
it was a fantastic pitch. Capellan had only played one game on it over the year just to kind of sound it out, but I hope it's used a lot more because it's a great facility. It's the old Quest University, and they had
Oh,
gone bankrupt, and Capilano bought them over. So the ultimate plans haven't been decided yet, but it's too good a pitch to go to waste. It's also been put down though as a part of a legacy project for the Squamish Nation, just so that
hmm.
they've got there. And I know it's quite a thriving hotbed of college soccer, especially at youth level. And I got to meet up with Oz Sweeney, who long time listener of the show, who interacted with him for years on Twitter. So nice to actually put a face to the name. And he's involved in one of the VSL teams, Sea to Sky, that at the moment aren't able to play their games in Squamish because they have to kind of show that they're committed and that everything will be fine. But they hope to eventually play out of there. And it'd be great also to even see Altitude play one or two games up there as because it ties in with their whole thing as well of mountains, North Shore, and it's fantastic. And there was a really good crowd out for the tournament as well. And well done to Capilano University for putting on a great event. 13 games I called in a 4-day period. 4 on Wednesday, 4 on Thursday, just the 3 on Friday, and just the 2, the medal matches on Saturday. And amazingly, now still doing this podcast. My old voice is holding out. Had a blast. Really loved it. Had some good chats with
I,
lots of good football people as well. And of course, my worst nightmare, two French teams getting in the
oh
final with
yes,
my lack of
yes.
French. But I thought I got through pretty well. I didn't get any complaints.
Comment ça va, mon ami? I met a French-speaking woman from the Congo this morning,
Oh,
and
wow.
and I said to her, yeah, in French, I said, I speak French, but not very well, and she just smiled at me.
It's like when I went to Austria and started speaking German,
Oh
and
no.
the woman in the shop said, uh, you're speaking German. We speak Austrian German. I take it you speak English. I was like, yes. And the rest of the conversation was English. I was like, I'll finally use my high school German.
I hope you didn't say things in English, that I heard you say in English.
Of course not. I was ordering some strudel.
Oh, okay. There you
Of
go.
course. What else would I be doing? Talking of Germans, I got to reconnect with my favourite German, Charlotte Ring, assistant coach at Capilano University. Got to know Charlotte the last couple of years when she was playing and coaching in League One. So it was great to reconnect with Charlotte up there as well. She's a friend, a fantastic person, and one of the up and coming top coaches in the women's game in Canada. She's doing all her coaching badges just now. And I don't think she listens to the show because she still talks to me after all my German jokes. So. But like genuinely, Charlotte is one of the nicest and sweetest people I've ever met in BC soccer. I
Which
love her to bits, and she's a great girl, and now a bronze medalist as well in her first year coaching the Caps. So fantastic.
which to be fair is not something you say about most Germans.
No, so yeah, that's how much I like Charlotte. So she's the assistant coach there, or one of the assistant coaches. The man at the helm of Capilano University, who medalled for the first time since 2001, 23 long years. They went into nationals as the eighth seeded team of the eight because they were the hosts, and they didn't have the best Pac West season, although they did get a silver medal in the end after a good late run. And they were the underdogs, and they ended up coming away with bronze, and it was fantastic. And their head coach, Dennis Kindle,
Oh, what's the relation to Steve?
Steve's brother.
Oh, there you go. Nice.
So yeah, he was very emotional after it. There was tears, and he's been in charge. He's been coaching for 20 years, and he's been in charge of Capilano for over 10 years now. So it was a fantastic performance by all the girls. They lost their first game 5-0. And I've spoken about this when I did Nationals 2 years ago. I love the playoff system that they have. So there's the four quarterfinals, and the four winners of that play in what's called the gold semi-final. And the two winners of that go to the championship game.
Hmm.
The four quarterfinal losers then play two bronze quarterfinals. And the two winners of those play the two losers of the gold semi-final. And whoever wins that plays in the bronze medal game. So you can lose your first game, but you've still got a chance to medal.
Hmm.
Whereas in U Sports, if you lose your first game, you're basically just playing from positions from fifth to eighth, which must be really devastating because you've worked a whole season to get to nationals. You lose your first game, you've possibly travelled across the country, and your medal hopes have gone. So I really love the way that the CCAA do that, and I would love that to be adopted elsewhere as well. I just think it's fantastic. And talking of U Sports, the last college thing we'll talk about before we get into the meat and potatoes of the show, I've got to give a massive congratulations. UBC made history today. The men won their 14th national title and their first since 2013, and the women won their ninth national title back to back and their third in 6 years. And it's the first time in the programme's history, with all those national title wins, that the men and the women have both won national championships in the same year.
Congrats.
I mean, tremendous stuff. And I'm really curious for the CPL draft that is coming up, because for Vancouver and Pacific, there is some clear talent in Canada West at UBC, but also there's the most valuable player in Canada West who actually plays with Fraser Valley. For me, if Vancouver FC are smart, you're drafting Matteo Brahinza as one of your draft picks because he's from the Fraser Valley. He's had a career year. He's a third year though, and as we spoke in last week's show, that isn't often the guys that go in this draft. It's the first and second years, but
because of age.
yeah. But for me, it's like if you overlook that, you're like crazy. I also would not be surprised if Jovan Mann, Whitecaps alumni, gets picked up as well. Most valuable player at the U Sports Men's Championship and scored the winning goal today. And how about this for drama in the men's game? It's the 92nd minute. There's 10 seconds of stoppage time left in the second half before extra time looms. Cross comes in and UBC head it home for the winner.
Wow.
And in the women's game, they scored in the dying seconds of the first half. Last year, UBC women won it with a goal in the last second in extra time. So they never give up, these teams. It's been an absolute pleasure commentating on UBC, well, since 2017, but this year, it was amazing talent. I love all the girls on that UBC team. Their social media is some of the best, like soccer social media in BC. It's so entertaining, and the girls have such a great spirit. Jesse Simons is a fantastic coach. I thought he might be in the frame for moving into NSL, but I spoke to him about it. He's really happy where he is, and to be totally honest, he probably makes more money at UBC as well than he'd make in NSL, and it's maybe a little bit more job security, I think, as well.
Well, yeah, and the NSL, I mean, we've talked about how there's so many unknowns, or at least public unknowns.
Yeah.
That it's probably feels safer to stay in something that's so well established.
And you're doing so well in it as well.
Yeah.
And you've got a legacy program like Mike Mosher on the men's side. This is his 29th year at the helm of UBC, and his dad was the coach before him. I do wonder whether Mike, after winning this, might be thinking, you know what, I've got to the age now, I might just pack it all in.
I don't know him well, but I know a lot about him from people.
He is fantastic. Just a final big well done. UBC men, UBC women, Capilano Blues women. Wonderful college season for the BC schools, and delighted to have just been a part of it. And I want to thank everyone as well that sent nice messages as well. The UBC girls, I didn't tell this story when it happened, but I'll mention it now. This is why I love this team and I love the girls. When they qualified for nationals, when they were at the Final Four, they sent me a video message when I was commentating on the men's final, just saying, "We've made it to nationals, Michael!" And it was like so sweet, and it really touched me. And that was one of the nicest things that's happened to me this year in a football sense. Was absolutely delighted that they've gone back to back. For three of the girls as well, it's their third national championship in their college career. And that's just amazing. And there's girls that's on the team, they've only been on it for 2 years, and now they've won 2 back-to-back championships.
They don't know what it is to lose.
Exactly. Wish we could say that about the Whitecaps.
That's not a good segue. That's not a good segue.
It's a factual segue. We'll get in to the Whitecaps.
We don't always keep factual things in the show.
True.
I'm sorry.
So sometimes things have to get cut out. Even though I'm adamant that they're factual and you might think that they're not.
Or vice versa.
Oh, yeah. Or other throwaway comments that are factual.
And sometimes they need to go into the Alpine room.
Yes. They need to go into episode 1000.
Oh my goodness. Oh.
We'll touch a little bit on our Vancouver FC chat in the last part, but I'd been chatting to a few folk about it this week, and I said, we actually cut half an hour of it out. And Felipe said, if that's the stuff that made it in, I really need to hear the stuff that got cut out.
That's funny because a number of people talked to me about it as well. Oh, man.
Yeah, we'll come to that in part 4. Interestingly, after me saying the shows with lots of CPL coverage don't get the numbers, that episode seemed to bring some numbers in.
Oh, there you go.
A lot seem to be round about the Langley area from my geographical thing, but
Really?
I can't pinpoint it that much. I'm just guessing. Right, let's get into Whitecaps now because I've chatted. I said we'll have 4 parts of half an hour, and the first half hour is just me saying how much I love college football, which I do.
Yeah.
And it's something we don't have in Scotland. And I've got sidetracked already here. It's taken me a while to really appreciate the college system in the US because when you see the numbers they get out at their pigskin football and how people just love their colleges that they've been to and that they've got the alumni connections and everything, it's actually wonderful. And that's the kind of connection that I wish people had for the professional football stroke soccer teams here in Canada. Because if you could bottle that college football, we do anything to get out in numbers to support this team. I mean, it would be amazing. Like, I go down to Oregon a lot and you see all the Beavers and the Duck stuff everywhere. I mean, I'm a Beavers man because it's closer to the Oregon coast for no other reason. And also Canadian Beaver. And obviously you like your Beaver buzz. You did a big tifo about it.
Oh, man.
Which I think was another discussion we had on a show that had to get cut.
We'll talk about that maybe another time.
Right, Whitecaps, before I get distracted again. So I've got all the fun stuff out the way for the show. It's depressing from now on. The Whitecaps season ended in Los Angeles on Friday evening. A tough 1-0 loss for the Whitecaps to LAFC. And again, you could argue that they were the masters of their own downfall. But by not turning the first half dominance in areas of the park into a goal and going in to half time with the lead, they needed to do that. They needed to get the first goal in this. And the way the second half started, it's like they had to take advantage of it. And not for the first time this season, not for the first time in this series, not for the first time in a game in LA. Brian White had a miss in the first half that then loomed large over the rest of the game. Absolutely huge in the grand scheme of things. Although I do have to say, I think if he had buried it, I think VAR would have chopped it off for offside. I think he was just off.
Yeah, I think that's a fair show. I think, and I've seen obviously other people be critical of Brian White, The Whitecaps are also in this game, Michael, because of Brian White.
True.
Right? So, yes, you can be disappointed he's missed another chance like this in away to LAFC. You could say maybe that miss was it like the 42nd or 43rd minute or something? Is that the one you're talking about?
The one they pulled wide, yeah, 43rd.
Yeah. So it's right before half. You could look at that as the turning point of the game if you really wanted to, but I think
do. Well, one of them, that and whatever Chirundolo said to his team at half time, because they were a different animal in the second half.
Brian White needs to be more like in the spot that Krylik's in for this squad. And I think this is one of the things they really missed the opportunity with as a club is to bring in a better number one goal scorer. I know we all know how much Vanni Sartini appreciates Brian White, his qualities, his work rate, how he puts the team first, his finishing, his record-setting goal scoring for the club, all that kind of stuff. I just feel like if they had gone the route of bringing in another like top striker, and it doesn't have to change the other things it did. I think you probably could do it by like buying down a Kubas or whatever.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely.
So if they had done that, and I think they could have made the case of this is a special year, so we're going to spend a little bit more money.
Well, I mean, you have been like from January when we've done our shows, you have been consistent with that thought, and I agree with it.
Because they did a whole bunch of other special things for sure, and they knew it was going to be a special year because they had this opportunity to bring in bigger crowds because of what was going on in the league and all that stuff and whatever. It felt like a missed opportunity, and I think had they been able to do that, able to bring in that kind of player, again, I'm not saying like someone who's under 30 who's has hundreds of goals in the Premier League in England or something like that, but like someone of at least the next caliber, the next level of player above a Brian White as a striker and above Kubas as a DP. And then Brian White could have been that second striker, or when they played two, he could have been that guy, or he could have played underneath the striker or on the wing, and when they played three up front or whatever, and still probably gotten a similar number of goals. I think that I think we would both say they would never have been in this game. They would have finished higher up the table. They would have had a better pathway through the playoff.
And I think there's a few things you can look at that point towards that, which adds to the frustrations of all of this. And Vanni mentioned it a couple of times as well.
Totally. It's obviously what I'm suggesting is only one of the ways that this could have played out differently.
Yeah, but a huge one.
Yeah, and I know you're always like king and queen and all this thing. I don't mean to go down that road, but I feel like they could have maybe taken a different approach for this special season. But I do also want to just reiterate what I said earlier, in that I don't think the Whitecaps are even in the playoffs necessarily or in this spot if Brian White hasn't done Brian White things all year long for them. You can only be so negative towards him when he's the one who helped get you.
I know, and I always feel bad when I level any criticism at him because of the servant that he's been to the club, because he has been consistently phenomenal since coming to this club. And this was a discussion I was having with someone this week. He's good for 15 goals in the regular season. Would you swap out 5 of that if you could score in the playoffs? And it's like, you'd love that. But then without those 5,
are you in the playoffs?
Then even be in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're balancing it. But the point that you've just made about bringing someone else in, I mentioned I met Oz Sweeney when I was in Squamish. We were talking about that actually yesterday, and the fact that he would have liked to have seen a DP striker come in to play alongside Brian.
Yeah.
And you've got your 2 striker system, which doesn't really seem to be ideally what Vanni wants to go for. We know what a good chemistry Ryan-Brian connection has. And when it's in full flow, it's a thing of beauty. They've got this kind of telepathic, he's making this run. And when one of them's not in the team, it falls down. Yeah. Because they're still making the passes, and then the person that's there in place of the other one's not making it. But yeah, I think that needs to be one of the things to look at.
I just think all season, and even going into this off season, there are a lot of Whitecaps fans who have sleepless nights because they have dreams, or maybe for them nightmares, of what could have been with next upgrade DP striker with Brian White, with gold behind them, with Kubas and your other Scottish buddy who I always mess up his name, Stuart
Armstrong. Yeah,
Stuart Armstrong, right behind them. I think people would look at that and be like, okay, that could have been the team that actually made us not just competitive to get in the playoffs, or the first couple rounds of the playoffs, but to get into those final rounds of the playoffs. And I don't see that kind of change necessarily happening in this offseason. I just think last year the Whitecaps, I think Greg Kerfoot and the Whitecaps could have said, hey, we want to increase the budget, or we want to increase the spending anyways, but this year we're just going to spend that extra couple million or whatever just to see this happen.
Well, they moved up to 12th.
Yes. Don't get me wrong. They totally have increased spending. I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining on behalf of Whitecaps fans about that.
No,
but
like a way it could happen is like Andres Kubis, who will come to shortly in terms of the decisive goal. But I mean, he's been garnering interest, and he's signed through to the end of 2026. He could go. That could free up a DP. So you've got that option, or you could buy Kubis down. And then does Fafa come back? Because he is one of the players that's in an option year. And we've spoken before about that option wasn't automatically triggered. I think the Whitecaps would be foolish not to take the option, even just to have him as a trade option. Because I'm pretty sure there's a lot of clubs would be interested in that. But the other thing in regards to trading, it's like, could you trade Brian White for another? You're probably not going to get a striker in MLS that is going to be as good to replace Brian, because no one's going to give that up. But you could trade it for another piece and then free up a striker role that you bring a DP in and buy Kubis down. So there's all those things. And I'm not for 1 minute advocating that they move Brian White on. I think they need to keep him, but add in some support. And I think the hope was that Damir Krylak was going to be that guy this year. And I think it's fair to say that
He
he
clearly
hasn't.
wasn't. And the thing is that was kind of noticeable fairly early in the season. Like I think you were talking about this as early as what, like April,
Yeah.
May at the latest?
I mean, you saw it last year with RSL. It wasn't the Krylak pre-injury.
No. No.
And when we interviewed him at the start of the year, he was so confident that he was back to his best. And then he scored against Tigres. And you're like, oh, we've got the Krylak that I love. And then it hasn't worked out for him. And we'll come back to Krylak in a sec. We'll get back to the game. We spoke about that miss from Brian White. There wasn't a lot that happened in the first half. Lloris denied White with a chance earlier. Buanga hit an early one in the side netting for LA. But LA, they felt so out of sorts. And I don't know if it was the pressure of the occasion, if it was just that the Whitecaps didn't let them get settled into the game. But the Whitecaps bossed that first half. And afterwards, Steve Cherundolo spoke about how good the Whitecaps were in that first half in the midfield and didn't let his team play. And he gave them huge plaudits. And they were excellent in that first half. It was the kind of performance I wanted to see from them. And the only thing that was missing was the goal.
In the first half, how lots of people said, oh, they were dominant. I would edge for sure. I think they were better than LAFC, but like I think dominance is probably too strong of the word.
Yeah, actually, no, that is fair. They bossed the game in terms of possession.
Yeah.
And they carried the play. But they didn't carve out clear-cut goal-scoring opportunities. Like they couldn't penetrate into the final third.
Yeah.
And that was what let them down. And I felt at half-time fairly confident, but also very aware that they needed to have got that goal in the first half. And it didn't come because you knew LA were going to go in and they were going to regroup and they were going to come out a different beast. And it was interesting because Giroud got dropped for this one and then came on at half-time. Giroud coming on, I didn't think necessarily was going to be a big boost to LA because he just has not performed in MLS play.
No.
He scored in the League Cup, he scored in the Leagues Cup, but he hasn't got his first MLS goal.
And those were finals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't think it was necessarily, that I'm worried that Giroud's coming on.
And the bigger thing about their benches, which was sad for me, was they dropped Kai Kamara to put on Carlos Vela.
Yeah, I didn't. I thought that was a horrible decision.
Yeah.
And then you don't even use Vela.
Yeah. I mean,
and Vela came on, I think, the last game of the season
against Vancouver. Was that
or maybe it was the first game against Vancouver, and he looked a shadow of him. He's not fit.
Yeah.
Whereas you've got Kai Kamara that's fit. Has announced he's going to play for Sierra Leone again. He's
yes.
International retirement.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah. And it's like you drop him.
Yeah, that was strange to me. Dropping Kai Kamara for a fully fit, younger player who maybe will help you more defensively or something.
Yeah, or even the Carlos Vela of 2 years ago.
Sure. But Kai Kamara, you know his commitment. You know he's going to help you defensively, especially in the air. You know he desperately wants to win the game.
Mm.
Like, yeah,
maybe this will trigger him moving on, and we'll finally get him back in Vancouver.
Wow.
He said he when we chatted off the record after our chat a couple of weeks ago, he'd be open for coming back here. He loves the city.
I will say I did talk to him on the phone after that, after you talked to him, and I said the very same thing. I said, "What's next for you?" And he's like, I'm open to staying here. We'll see how the season ends, and we'll go.
But he does love being in LA. It's where it all started for him.
Oh yeah. Oh, you don't blame him for that.
And there's more playoffs to come, so there's a good chance that he's going to be back involved. But yeah, I thought that was so odd.
Yeah.
It made no sense to me at all.
Head scratcher.
Yeah, unless there was a knock we didn't know about. Like Ryan Raposo wasn't in the 18.
Oh, yeah.
He's been carrying an injury for a few weeks. So it was deemed, like, this is too big a game to risk that. And it was nice to see Ocampo getting back on the bench because I'd like what I've seen him in bursts. The second half started and LA were just rampant. It was wave after wave of LA attack. Buanga was dangerous. The cap killer. There was a non-penalty call a minute in to the second half that I don't know how VAR didn't call them over to review that. That was a penalty for me all day long.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It's baffling that that was not given.
To me, it was both clear and obvious that
Yep.
was a kick in the box. It takes out a leg. It's a clear penalty.
Yeah. And yeah, maybe the referee didn't have a good view, fair enough. But you've got VAR. It's maybe not
Yes.
like a cup final in Canada where there's no VAR, and we'll talk about in part 3. But they dodged a huge bullet there. But LA after that, they just had chance after chance. I want to talk about one of the LA players, and I think he's a bit of an unsung hero for them. He's not one of their big names. He's not one of their flashy guys, but I thought he was absolutely fantastic for this last game against Vancouver, and that's Lewis O'Brien, 26-year-old English midfielder on loan from Nottingham Forest, and he's kind of bounced about teams like Huddersfield, Bradford, Notts Forest, Middlesbrough. He was excellent in this game. That's been a fantastic pickup by LA.
They've been able to make additions over the course of their existence that have just either filled a gap, played a role, or taken just given them that bump that they needed. And I think that's another example of one.
And again, it's not like a big flashy name. It's like it shows you what you can get value-wise, and it's the kind of market that the Whitecaps should be looking at. But then Buanga crashed one off the bar in the 54th minute after a kind of cutback from Giroud. There's another couple of chances, but the breakthrough eventually came. 62nd minute. Ball comes back into the Whitecaps half. Kubis jumps up with the header, kind of flicks it back. Now, the ball could have gone anywhere, and I think the Whitecaps would have been surviving it. But the one place it couldn't have fallen is where it fell. Bogusz nips in, kind of wrong foots Ranko. There's no way he can recover after that with his speed. And then the pace just from Bogusz in on goal, tucks it past Takaoka. And that is what proved to be the match winner in the end.
There's so much on that play, right? There's the ball from Taka forward that's a little bit rushed or whatever. Aaron Longwood's a good header. The way the ball bounces and glances off Kubas's head. The way Bogusz not just gets the ball past Ranko, but then Ranko cannot recover.
Yep.
It felt like I remember year 1, year 2 of Ranko. It was like it reminded me of all the Simon Fudge criticisms were like kind of summed up in those moments there or whatever. And then
I mean, he was just so wrong footed. It would have been so hard to recover from that, though.
True.
But yeah, it obviously when it's a goal like that, it does kind of hang the defender out to dry a little bit. And Kubas had a couple of misplaced passes before that as well. It was just one of those games, but it was a great finish by Bogusz. It was a good goal all round.
Yeah.
And I've got to say, I wasn't after that. I'd said to you, I think that's it over. I wasn't confident.
I think there's more.
Yeah.
I think there's either a Whitecaps equalizer or potentially a last minute.
My prediction going into the game had been 1-1 with the Whitecaps winning on penalties. So, I mean, they kept that hope going to the very, very end. And then Blackman had the ball in the net in the 74th minute. I let out this huge yell when Blackman scored, and I hadn't noticed it was offside. And then as soon as I saw the replay, it's like miles offside.
Yeah, it wasn't close, that one, unfortunately.
But that was basically as good as it got for the Whitecaps. They huffed, they puffed. I was never confident they were going to get back into it. Vanni was a little bit late rolling the dice. And this is my complaint of the subs. And Vanni touched on it after the game as well. I think they needed to bring Damir Kreilach on. And I know everything that we've just said about Damir, but he offered something different. He offered some height.
Yeah.
I'd have had him there alongside Brian, but Vanni said he spent 20 minutes agonising whether to bring him on for Brian. And it's like, if you're agonising that much, you should probably have brought him on. I think he said 20 minutes. Maybe I'm wrong there, actually. I've only listened to it live, but in my head, I have him saying 20 minutes.
And I also would question the bringing him on for Brian, as opposed to, like you said, bringing him alongside Brian.
Get him to win the headers, knock it down, and then White's the guy you want for those knockdowns. Or all year for the two of them.
Yeah, or vice versa.
Yeah.
Kreilach knocks it down for White, or White knocks it down for Kreilach. Yeah.
It's what I've talked about for many years. What I love It's a front duo, a big guy, a little guy. You're Sutton Shearer going way back. That's what they needed. Wasn't to be. And the Whitecaps' playoff dreams and season is over for another year. So, bit down after that one, I've got to say. And we'll talk a little bit more about coming out of that game and then what we're going to do in the next couple of weeks in the podcast as well. And we'll be back with all of that after this episode's first Britpop song.
Hi, I'm Vanni Sartini, and you're listening to the AFTN Soccer Show.
She says there's ants in the carpet, dirty little monsters, eating all the mussels, picking up the rubbish. Give her effervescence, she needs a little sparkle. Good morning TV, you're looking so healthy. We all say don't want to be alone. We wear the same clothes 'cause we feel the same, and kiss the dry lips when we say goodnight. Another century, oh, it's nothing special. Sex on the TV, everybody's at it, and the mind gets dirty as you get closer to 30. Gives her a cuddle, glowing in a huddle. Good night TV, you're all made up, and you're looking like we all say don't want to be alone. We wear the same clothes 'cause we feel the same, and kiss the dry lips when we say goodnight. Another century, oh, it's nothing special.
Welcome back to the AFTN Soccer Show on CITR Radio 101.9 FM. And kicking off this part, it's this episode's first of two Britpop songs that we're bringing you as we celebrate the 30th anniversary of one of my favourite musical genres and periods when I was very active in my gig going. Spoken about it before, I'd be going to like 4 or 5 concerts a week. Most of them in like Glasgow, which is like an hour to an hour, 15-minute drive from my house, getting back to my house at like 1:30 in the morning and then getting in to work. But yes, one of the iconic Britpop bands kicking off this part, Blur. The last single to be taken from their iconic third album, Park Life. It was a single that was released on November 7th, 1994, entering the UK charts this week, where it reached the high point of number 19. And that was actually one of my favourite Blur songs from that album, End of a Century. And not quite the end of a century, the end of a half-century season for the Whitecaps on Friday night, as their 50th anniversary season came to an end, the end of their playoff hopes. And we'll kind of unpack a little bit of it in this part. So what we're going to do over the next couple of shows is we're going to do our full Whitecaps end of season reviews. Next week, Zach and me will give our thoughts on some of the stuff, give our usual end of season awards, talk about the highs, the lows, anything that comes out of end of season availability. We'll look at everything from personnel to management to tactics, the home form, stuff like that. And then we're going to do something a little bit different, maybe in 2 shows' time, maybe 3. We're going to have a round table, and hopefully Asa, Raymond from Global and the radio broadcasts, and Har, Felipe, Zach and myself, just to chat about the Whitecaps season and what's next. And we'll bring that out in 2 or 3 episodes' time. But for this part, we'll give some just initial thoughts coming out of this game, raw thoughts really on the season. We both listened into Vanni's post game on Friday, and I said to you, I'm not going to ask anything because it's too raw. And I feel I'd rather wait for the end of season availability to ask the questions because you want Vanni to have some thinking time. That said, he was in fine fettle and given some good quotes as you'd expect, and some quite honest quotes, I think, as well. But I think it is better usually, Zach, to give him a couple of days just for it really to start to sink in and look back on the year that was.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to compare maybe his responses in the end of season availability with what he said at the after the final whistle on Friday night.
Because you're emotional by that point.
Yeah. Well, he wasn't as emotional as I thought he might be.
No, and he didn't get sent off in any of these 3 games, so he is learning. He said he targeted that, so he's got that.
Yeah, I mean that was, had he got more cards or another sending off or a suspension, it would have been a really awkward way to end the season. So,
but he was proud of his team, and he's every right to be proud of his team. The way they played in this 3-game series was phenomenal.
Yeah, and they really showed. And this is, I think, one of the big talking points both today and as we talk about the season with others, is in one sense they did kind of show that they have, in some ways at least, progressed. They have, in some ways at least, move forward. Now, obviously, I think for most Whitecaps fans, they probably haven't moved forward enough, and that's where the disappointment comes in. But I know there are a lot of Whitecaps fans who have looked at this season as improvement because of the game against Portland in the postseason, the win against LA at home in the postseason, retaining the Voyageurs Cup and qualification for CONCACAF next year. Even some of them, I think, would also say, look what they've done in terms of attendance and in improving that this year. Obviously, there's layers to that.
Yeah, there's outliers and things with that. But yeah, I mean, on the whole, they've got good crowds in for most of it. Canadian Championship final but that was an annoyance for me that the fans didn't come out in numbers for that for various reasons. Midweek and games coming thick and fast as well, and cup football not being that big excitement for some elements of the fan base. I think for me, one of the frustrating things of this season is this 3-game series showed how close the Whitecaps are to breaking through to being a top team in the West.
Mm-hmm. Which again goes back to what we said in the earlier part of the show is had they been able to make that incremental step in terms of their approach to DPs, you're left wondering how much that would have enabled them to make a fuller step in the postseason.
Yeah,
and the league table, obviously.
There's other things as well, which we won't get into all of this in this part, but like tactical stuff, and like it was nice to see that Vanni moved away from the rigidity of 3 at the back and showed a little bit of sense and, okay, we need to go a flat back 4 in this LA series, and stuck to it. And it worked. It was good. And that's something that will be exciting to see what happens next season if Vanni is the man leading the team, and we'll come to that in a sec.
And Vanni detractors will say, well, we thought we were getting... based on what things he said at the end of last year and beginning of this year, we thought we were getting more tactical nuance and flexibility. And over the course of the season, again, that could be something that also, I think you could see it either way. Like, hey, at least they got it right sometimes, but he didn't show it enough, and he didn't show it enough the whole season.
And he was slow to react to making the changes.
Yeah. Because again, that would have put them in a better spot, and when it came to postseason,
and that was one of the big things. And he said it before this game, and he said it after this game as well. They shouldn't have been 8th.
Yeah,
it should have been somewhere from 3rd to 6th, and that anywhere in that, I think, would have been a fair landing point. And I think we could have realistically been talking that the Whitecaps had got through a 3-game series and were into the next round in the conference semis.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's another frustrating thing. So, I mean, there's positives to take out of this season. There's highs. There's a lot of excitement. My gut feeling right now, coming out of this loss on Friday, if I'm picking one word, one emotion, it is frustration. Because I do feel this team should have got better results, should have finished higher than they were, should have had a different playoff thing. And yeah, it's all coulda, shoulda, etc., etc. But to go back to one of the first things that you just said there, and this will be a big talking point today and on our future shows as well. Is this a season of progression, regression, or pretty much staying the same? Now, let's both give our quick answers for this. For me, it's pretty much staying the same, but very close to dipping in to a slight regression.
In addition to what I've already said, I think people will feel justified in arguing for any three of those options.
Yeah, and I could make a case right now for all three of them because they won 2 games in the playoff, but they want to say play in or what? They won 2 playoff games. They won a home playoff game, only the second time they've ever done that. They gave a great account of themselves in the playoffs and a better account of themselves this year than they did last year.
Exactly.
Against the same team.
And for those factors, Michael, and what you said in last week's show, I think it would be maybe the most fair to give them the rating of minimal but still progression, because I think the experiences that they gave fans in the postseason this year are much appreciated and much valued, and also I think push them. Like you said last week, which you said multiple years at the end of the season, at least their last experience in a home game was they sent the crowd home really happy.
Yes, and I think that is absolutely massive.
Yeah, like think about the year where
numbers in for next year.
I forget what year it was, maybe 2016 or something, where it was not a good year, and yet the last game of the year they got to like hoist the Cascadia Cup.
Yeah,
I just remember you left the stadium that day feeling like this was a crap year, but like I got so much hope for next year. And I think despite the difficulties of the year, especially the off-field ones, which we'll talk about probably in a deeper way later, or next week, the off-field, the ticketing, the messy factor, the no-show factor, all those different things that were negatives. I think they, and the no home game against Portland, which again they flipped on its head in a massive way by smashing them. Those things are negated by the fact that they did demonstrably do better, even though they didn't progress around further. They did better in the playoffs, and they had this great home away from home playoff experience for their fans who were able to be there, and home playoff experience that I can guarantee you that will be part of what Axel will be talking about in the off season. It'll be definitely what their ticketing and marketing people are going to be kind of focusing on, right? To say, hey, we have taken at least a half a step forward. Join us as we take a full step forward next year. And so, to that, looking at it from that perspective, I would say, if I had to choose only one of the three, Michael, I would go in the progression category.
The little things that make me kind of move more kind of the other way. They were 6th last year. They were 8th this year. They got 1 more point last year than this year. Last year, in finishing 6th, they finished 8 points behind the champions, St. Louis. This season, they finished 17 points by the first place LAFC, but we had some strong performances at the top. So that one, not as much. They had 1 more win, but they had 1 more defeat and two less draws. This season, they scored 52 goals, which was actually 3 less than last year. And they conceded 1 more goal than they did last year. And their goal difference was 4 worse this year than last year. So that, not winning the Cascadia Cup, which I hate to say it, but I don't put as much stock in that as I used to now. They've won the Canadian Championship again, which is fantastic. But all those little factors is why I think it's kind of stayed the same. And if they hadn't been so good in the postseason, I would have had it as a regression. But the fact that they were so good, I've kind of got them everything balances itself out and staying the same.
Everything you said there makes a valid argument for this staying the same.
And everything you said as well makes a valid argument for progression. But I mean, see, when you look around the various social media, always a risky thing to do and never a good way to take it as a good snapshot of the fan base, but it's what I like to do and it's what we have. On the whole, it's positivity. And for this Whitecaps fan base, that's saying something.
Yeah, totally.
I think there is the folk that's seeing it as a good season outweigh it in that category, and the folk that's a bit enthused going into next year to not also outweigh. So I think the majority of fans are looking at it in a good way. A couple of weeks ago, it could have been completely different. Like a home, or not a homeless, but a loss to Portland, whole different scenarios we're talking about now.
Totally.
So the difference that a couple of weeks has made is massive.
If they had lost the home game in Portland, I think it's absolute regression.
And you're questioning a lot of things that you maybe not as questioning now. But I'm genuinely curious from everyone that's listening. Maybe not everyone, because I don't think I can handle that much of tweets and emails coming in. But those of you that do want to get in touch, do you see the 2024 Whitecaps season as one of progression, regression, or pretty much the status quo? So get in touch, AFTN Canada on Twitter, /X, or AFTN Canada at hotmail.com. I'd love to hear the general thoughts, and we'll get into some of those points next time around. I do feel the overall squad was stronger this year.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think this was, and we said it a lot, this was probably the best Whitecaps squad of the MLS era, playing some of, if not the best football of the MLS era. And again, you can use that to kind of say it's a little bit of progression.
Yeah. I mean, for you also, I mean, they've upped not just the quantity, but the quality of the Scottish talent in the side. So I know you're all behind that. As you wear your East Fife toque with the Scottish flag on the front.
Yeah. Well, you know how I said I can't have good things at the same time. If East Fife are winning, the Whitecaps are shit and vice versa. Now they're both shit.
Oh, there you go. Hey, I forgot to ask you.
They're both losing, I should say.
And I know all the listeners want to know this. What hat were you wearing on Friday?
Oh no.
No. Those who are superstitious are going to be none too happy with you, Michael. I think Har might defriend you.
I brought it to Squamish.
You brought it, you weren't wearing it.
I had it in my car, hanging on the armrest.
Sorry, you can edit this out if you want.
No, I need to leave it in. It's my fault. It's all my fault. It's all my fault.
Sorry, I just thought about that right now. Oh, man.
I thought about it on Friday morning. I was like, I must remember to take the hat out of the car. And then it was torrential. It started to rain as I was getting back to the hotel, and I just wanted to rush in.
But you're not, I thought you're not superstitious. I thought you were just doing it for the...
I'm not overly superstitious, but I did think it was my lucky hat.
Well, I guess it still is.
It still is, yeah. I will make an apology to Vanni at the end of season press conference. I will make an official apology just now to all the Whitecaps fans listening. The lucky hat from Cannon Beach with the cute little dog on it that looks like my dog will be worn as much as possible next year. I accept full responsibility for my actions. I will take this long off season as time for reflection and come back a better hat wearing person.
Oh my goodness.
2025. Please don't cancel me. If I'm going to get cancelled, I want it to be for something more than not wearing a hat.
Oh, and
Episode 1000.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, why bring that up? I'm heartbroken at that.
I'm sorry, I just started talking about your toque, and then I was like, oh, you never talk about this. I should ask you.
I don't know if I was even wearing a hat in the hotel room. Oh, I need to build a TARDIS.
Or a DeLorean?
Oh, that'd be nice to drive around in.
Yeah.
But the TARDIS would give me so many good options. Could
there you
go back to the 1938 Scottish Cup final, the dinosaurs. Quite a difference between those two. Meet Stan Laurel.
Oh my goodness.
I've got a list of weird things I would do in a TARDIS. Actually, some of those I won't get into.
Yeah, please don't.
I mean, obviously, you want to have sex in the TARDIS because everything's bigger on the inside. Let's get back to the Whitecaps chat since I've ruined the whole year for the team. The squad was stronger this year. So there's 3 players signed through to 2027. Tristan Blackman, Ryan Gauld, Jeevan Badwal. 5 through to the end of 26. Sam Arakugbe, Andis Krubis, Ranko Veselinovic, Giuseppe Bovalina, Stuart Armstrong. 12 signed through to the end of next season. Sebastian Berhalter, Matthias Laborda, Bjorn Utvik, Pedro Viti, Brian White, Bilal Halbouni, Ali Ahmed, Max Anker, Eder Ocampo, Nicolas Florio Chateau, and the one that surprised me, I didn't know this until I saw it on this list, Damir Krylak.
Mm-hmm. I think I remember him signing a 2-year guarantee.
Yeah, that is not a second-year contract that I'm enthused about, and I love the guy.
He was going to be on a significant amount, you would think.
And I can't see him being able to really get moved.
No.
After the season that he's had. I guess they could buy him out, or they could mutually agree to part ways.
He's not going to do that.
I mean, he might want to retire. Maybe he feels in himself he's not had it in him. I mean, I don't know. Can we get the best out of him next year? If we could, I'd love him back. I do love him as a player. I love him as a guy. The chat we had with him was one of my favourite interviews of the year. Players with a club option for next season. There's 8 of them. Joe Bendick, Daiber Caicedo, Fafa Pico, Andrew Shop, Yoi Takaoka, Isaac Bomer, Levonti Johnson, and my hat. I think the hat option will get picked up. I think my option is going to get declined for covering the team for 2025. Maybe I shouldn't have said I wasn't going to cover Vancouver FC. Now I'm not going to have a team to cover next year.
Rise only.
Yeah.
TSS.
Ryan Raposo is out of contract. And Ralph Priso, there's a 2-year club option on him, apparently. And JC Gando, who folk may have forgotten about, but was loaned to the USL. And had a not bad season. We'll look a little bit at that next week. So we're not going to get into all our who should stay, who should go options this week. That is something that we will look at next week. There are some players on that. I mean, the ones I would like to look at, I think maybe just now, are the 7 option guys. So Joe Bendick, don't really see the point of bringing him back next year.
Absolutely not.
You've got some good young goalkeeping talent coming through in the 2s and the residency or academy, as you call it now.
If they're keeping Taka as the starter, you have Bowman as number 2, you have Anchor as
and you've got Anchor, and that's it.
You do not need Bendick. Yeah.
Like Bendick did save the Canadian Championship, arguably, because that's who Isaac Bowman was chatting to behind the goal, the penalty shootout that he saved.
Right.
But that aside, he didn't really feature. Daiber Caicedo, I'd like to bring it back if we're getting the Daiber of old.
I think the play there, this is my guess off the top of my head, is you take his option and then you loan him to a club who's going to pay an amount of his salary that makes it meaningful for you. And
maybe at the end, you don't actually stump up with the transfer fee that's meant to be.
Well, that would be the best option. I don't think they're going to get that.
Well, you also have Fafa Pico on an option, and I don't know that you can keep Caicedo and Pico.
And then of those two, I mean, Fafa has been more productive, but Daiber is younger.
Yeah. Also, Fafa really wants to be closer to Florida. I mean, he flew from LA to Miami and was at the Miami game on the Saturday because his family's there, so he wanted to be with his family.
Yeah.
And I don't fault him at all if he says, do you mind if you don't pick my option up, or pick my option up and trade me?
Trade me to Team Messi? Or to Orlando?
Who knows? Maybe Messi's had enough. The clock is ticking. I saw one headline on Messi's MLS career. It's like, wow, they've put the boot in early. It's definitely ticking on Suarez because the Miami fans have turned against Suarez.
Messi's got to stay there because he wants to win the World Club.
Oh God, yeah. Oh yeah. They're now representing MLS instead of whoever the MLS Cup champions are. I guess MLS are going to be praying now that it's like Seattle can go and win it.
Because Seattle's already in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they look stupid. Yeah, that whole thing is foolish. Anyways, that's it.
Andrew Shop, I didn't really want him back this year. He needs to go. We need an improvement in that position. Takaoka, I would keep obviously Isaac Boehmer keep, and Levante Johnson. Loved him in WFC too. I enjoy getting to know him. I was delighted when he signed his contract. And aside from the bangers in the Canadian Championship, I think his time here is done, and he'll go and light it up in the CPL next year.
I agree with you on Levante. I agree with you on Boehmer. I would say Taka. I think that they can invest more, the less of their cap in a keeper like
Actually,
Boehmer.
that's a good point. Depends what his option is.
Yeah, they invest less of their cap in a keeper like Boehmer. Maybe then bring in someone better than Bendik as the experienced backup. There's an option there. Now, obviously, Vanni and the coaching staff likes how Taka can help them build out of the back, which is, he's more experienced at and demonstrably better than Isaac at the moment. But whatever, that's only one element. So if they have a plan and they can an achievable plan that is to help better the squad overall, like free up some money to use in other places, I think that's a viable option. But I think you're more likely than not Taka would be back. The other one I maybe disagree with you on is Schopf, and I think with Schopf, I don't disagree with you in terms of they could be getting more out of what they're spending on Schopf. But again, it's do you think whether it's a trust thing, or do you think that they can actually bring in someone just as good or better on similar money or less money? In theory, they should be able to, of course.
Yeah.
But
I know Shop's a good player, and I just don't think we've seen the best of him in his time at the Whitecaps.
I don't think you're wrong with that at all.
And I don't know that we can get the best of him if we extend that.
Yeah, that's fair. But those are the two in that the second half there that I think they could go a different way. We'll see what happens.
Vanni noted in the post game the team is one of the smallest in the league. I think that's both in terms of size and height, but also like bulk as well. There's a lot of even like Ryan Gould. It's like if there's a fierce wind, you fear it's going to blow him over and he's going to have an injury. And there's a lot of guys like that on the team. Well, another frustration at not bringing Krylak on.
I was going to say Krylak's the guy who helps you in that category.
Yeah. But it'd be nice to get a couple of more bulked up players or something as well.
Yeah.
I want some beasts in the middle of the park.
Yeah, that's fair.
Vanni and his future, which we won't go too much into that just now, but Vanni was actually the one that raised it in his opening comments in the post-game press conference. So I think it's valid to talk about it now, because he did say, I said at the start of the show, this is actually a time of the year. Although I love our off-season shows, I don't like this particular week because everything ends all at once.
Yeah,
all the football just ends. It's not even phased out. It's just over. Vanni talked about it's like an end. I started this with end of a century. It's not an end of an era as such, but it's the end of this group being together because they acknowledged players are going to move on. And then he strangely said the manager might move on. And he brought that up, and I was like, why would you even choose to bring that up?
Yeah, you messaged me about that. I was like,
I was messaging Bahar going, because I knew I wasn't going to bother asking anything, and I was like, we should find out a little bit more about that because that's interesting. So I knew Har would be like right away, yeah, and like jump onto that one. But then he clarified it by saying, I've got a 2-year contract. He wants to be here because if nothing else, having that contract means he can stay in Canada because he doesn't want to go back to Trump land. Finish with a great quote. It's been that kind of season for Vanni.
He's got 1 year left of the 2 years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's got the 2-year deal. He's got 1 year left.
I'd be shocked if they went away from him. But I think you and I would be on the same page in terms of I can't see them extending him before next year's season and postseason are done. It would be crazy if they go on a good run and halfway through the year they extend him.
Yeah.
And then they crash and burn in the playoffs. I think that would be very bad. And now as a coach, it might not be great for him, for them not to have discussions with him about what the plans are or what they're thinking. But and then
expectations.
Like
totally. What is a successful season?
Totally. But
Like,
I
do
also,
you see this as a successful season for the team? Like we talked about regression and progression. Was it a successful season?
well, I think publicly they're saying, I think publicly, Vanni is saying it is.
Hmm.
And they have to say that though, right? Internally, I think you use the word frustration, I believe, right?
Hmm.
I think they would probably use more a language of disappointing.
Hmm.
Like sure they hit some of the marks or got the first playoff win or whatever in the non-wild card game or whatever. But I think there's still some disappointment that they didn't
Yeah.
actually get to the next
Some of
round.
the crucial KPIs were
Yeah,
not hit.
totally.
Going back to my bank manager staff association days, not going to make anyone called Anne cry though.
Yeah, that's good. That's well, you never know. We might have an Anne listening to this who is brought to tears by something that she may or may not hear.
Just the emotions of the show and the wonderful musical choice. I
That's
would
true.
hope.
That
Yeah.
too. But no, I really don't think that I really think they're going to ride out Vanny one more year. Like I said on a
Mhm.
previous show, I also think somewhere in the back of his mind or in his heart, like I think Axel Schuster really wants to bring in his own coach eventually.
Yeah. Because he's
Um,
not had the chance to do it. And
no,
there's a couple, I know we joked about Bruce Arena earlier, but there's a couple that immediately spring to mind. Jim
oh yeah,
Curtin
Jim Curtin,
suddenly
yes,
becoming available this week. And you're like, well,
yeah,
I have said for years on this podcast how much I admire what Jim Curtin has done at Philadelphia. And I think they've pulled the trigger on a bad season. And I get why they didn't make the playoffs, but it's like throwing a lot away. And I was surprised by that decision. I didn't know anything about it. I'd missed it. And I was chatting to Ben Steiner, who was doing the commentary at U Sports, and we are just chatting about the UBC games that he was doing. And he said, "Oh, I've got to just finish this article, and Jim Curtin's just been fired." I was like, "What?"
it is a bit surprising, and it is a bit interesting that this could be something that in theory could have a knock-on effect, whether that's for the Vancouver Whitecaps or another club in MLS in terms of their
He'll be
coaching decision.
coveted
Exactly.
because I said to you when we were chatting about it during the week, he is the ideal manager for me to be the guy that nurtures the talent from the residency to the twos to the first team.
Hmm.
I look around WFC2 right now, and there's not really guys on that team that I think can step into MLS. Florio Chateau, he's got the contract. Jeevan Badwell, he's got the contract. Jay Herdman, maybe, but I do feel, again, it's a small guy. And I mean, he's done well in the CPL, and we'll talk about that in the next part. And it's arguably a more physical league, and he hasn't kind of been bowled over in that. But there's not a big stream of talent coming through. And I think a guy like Jim Curtin would be a good guy to kind of oversee and have a little bit of an overhaul there. And if you're looking at new coaches, and I know the argument would be, well, we need an experienced coach. So you've got Curtin, Bobby Smirniotis, and Tommy Fielden Jr. It's like I would take either of them in a heartbeat here as well, if there is a vacancy, which I should probably give my thoughts on that now. Do I want Vanni to go? No. Do I think he should go? Genuinely 50-50. I know that's sitting on the fence, obviously,
Yeah.
but I can make arguments both ways.
Yeah. I'd be a little bit surprised. I don't I saw the stuff about Curtin, and then you had also messaged me about it, and I thought my first thought was like, oh, maybe Curtin sits out a year, or maybe Curtin was waiting for certain opportunities that might not be available at this present moment, and maybe they have a chance at him when Vanny's done. If Vanny were to be done next year,
Yeah,
and
I
his
guess if he
contract's
sat
done.
out a year, yeah.
But I think you're right. Someone like Curtin in the MLS context is too valuable a commodity to sit around for that long, without knowing what he has lined up next or what he's planning on doing next. In
I
terms
mean,
of guys
for
like,
me, he should go into somewhere like San Jose or even
yeah,
Toronto.
well, Toronto,
They're not going to have a vac.
yeah,
Actually, who knows? after the CSA thing came out this week, which we were not going to go into in this episode because there's
You're
more
talking about
going to come out this week.
the DeVos revelation? Is that what you're talking about?
Oh, well, the initial findings to the report that they said, and they were going to announce more information on it this week.
Did you see the article? I think it was the Globe and Mail that's saying,
No.
oh, this is a total tangent, but yeah, DeVos has been named by, the identity is being, kept because the people are still involved in football. But basically, the claim or allegation or whatever is that DeVos was informed in his interim role within Canada Soccer, not necessarily specifically of drones being used, but of spying that was happening by one or both of the national teams, and people were uncomfortable about it. And it was brought to his attention when he was in this, I think, interim role.
Ooh. Oh, I have
So
to dig that out. Yeah, I was going to talk
just
about
saw
this
the article.
stuff next week because Kevin
Yeah.
Blue said we're going to act quickly and we're going to publish findings this week. So I didn't want to just speculate on stuff,
yeah.
but wow. And
So-
not an ideal week before a big
Yeah.
couple of games as well.
Yeah. But I mean, just like
Worst possible week.
just like Noonan has said this week, this needs to get dealt with and needs to get dealt with quickly for the betterment of everyone in the Canadian football.
Draw a line
ecosystem.
under it, move on, know where folks stand.
Yeah.
And obviously, John Herdman might be one of those guys that might be a fall guy in this. And that's why I said,
Yeah.
TFC,
TFC.
going back to the Jim Curtin thing. But like Jim Curtin in a club like San Jose, that's exactly what they need right now. Because that organization needs blown up
Yeah.
and started from
Totally.
scratch.
But just to briefly touch on your other options in terms of CPL legends like Bobby or Tommy, yeah, those are the type of coaches you'd think, especially with Bobby, that he'd want to crack at TFC or Montreal.
Mm-hmm.
And you think for Tommy, you think much as he loves being a part of the community in Calgary, that he also would love to have a crack
Oh,
at it.
he would absolutely love to be here.
Yeah.
And I'd absolutely love him to be here as well.
I would absolutely love for Tommy to be here, to be able to engage with him.
We'd have another quote machine as well. It's like just take over from Vanni. And I tell you, if Vanni was to move on, he will also be sought after in MLS.
Yes.
It's going to be clubs that want him as well.
Yes, but in probably more so in the country that he does not want to be in. As you just
Yes. But maybe Jesse Marsh will bring him in as an assistant because he seems to be bringing everyone in as an assistant at the moment.
No, but those are temporary assistants.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm just half joshing. We actually got an email. We got two from Greg Petrie, but this is the Whitecaps one that he sent. So it ties in with what we're talking about. So I'll just kind of read this. I'll maybe just paraphrase little bits because it's a long one. And this part went on a little bit longer than I thought we might, as always. So Greg says, there's going to be plenty of time to reflect on the Whitecaps season, but one of the top items will be what to do with Vanni. On the one hand, he's almost certainly the most successful manager in Whitecaps history. 3 Voyageurs Cups, 3 playoff appearances, a play-in game win, a play-off game win. On the other hand, he'll frequently, stubbornly stick with players and formations that clearly aren't working. For instance, this year, he stuck with a formation that was dreadful at home and certainly cost him a higher playoff spot. A playoff spot that would have helped him avoid the 2 LA teams, as we talked about. The minute he switched to a formation that better suited the players he had, they demolished Portland and were some better finishing away from beating LAFC. One wonders how they might have done if they'd finished in the 3rd to 6th spot range instead of 8th, but we won't know because Vanni refused to switch from his perfect formation that no one else in the world plays. So Greg's sure that Vanni will be back next year, but also echoes what you say. Absolutely, the last thing the club needs to do is give him another extension before how you see the playoffs go next year.
Yeah, which again will put them in a precarious situation, and you'll feel like it. I mean, for long time listeners of this show, they'll know how unfair we felt it was for them to maybe, if you will, play that game with previous managers in the history of the MLS era. But I think based on, this it seems a little bit more fair based on how things have gone. It's more performance based as opposed to personality or additional scenario based, if you will, without rehashing all of
I mean, like personality wise, Vanni is a massive asset. And I know some folk will be like, no, he's the opposite of that. You can
Yeah.
drop the last two letters. That's what I think of Vanni and his
Yeah.
antics on the sideline. But everyone around the league love him.
Yeah.
You've got opposition fans wanting his autograph when he's at stadiums and stuff because they love him.
That dropped the last two letters bit with that was something else from you there. You're even quicker than usual, and you're always quick on the draw.
Rest of this part, let's just look at the rest of the playoffs, because we were the last game to finish in the West. So we know that the Western matchup now, after this long break for the international break, it's going to be Minnesota, LA Galaxy, Seattle, LAFC. I mean, my ultimate hope now is that the MLS Cup is maybe going to be on the West Coast. If it's in Seattle, I'll definitely head down to it. If it's at LA, I might head down for it. We'll kind of see how it goes. Last one I was at was in Seattle and had a great time with all the activities and festivities. Was gutted I couldn't get to the CPL ones because Felipe went and Scott Strasser was there and it all looked like fantastic.
Yeah.
But Saturday saw the 3 Eastern games that were all going to game 3 sorted out. And did you watch the Cincinnati NYC penalty shootout?
No. Even though you told me it's crazy, that one I have not watched.
So it went to penalties. It went to sudden death penalties. 5 penalties were missed or saved in a row between shooters. Let me get this right: 7 and 9. Or 6 and 8, something like that anyway. And it was either in round 9. Oh no, it was between shooters 7, 8, and 9. 5 of the 6 penalties were missed before the 9th NYC penalty taker tucked it away. It was incredible stuff. And there was a couple saved as well during the actual first 5.
That was in Cincinnati, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a big upset there as NYC got that win. But if you want to talk about big upsets,
This one I did see.
Miami. I said, I've used this phrase a lot, a stopped clock is right twice a day. And one of my preseason predictions came true. I said Miami would not win the MLS Cup and they would struggle in the playoffs. I don't even think I saw this coming.
No.
Atlanta.
Surely you were thinking they were going out in one of the one-offs.
Yes.
Not in a best of 3. Not in
Especially after winning their first game.
Yeah. Not in one of these unfair best of 3.
Yes. Jordi Alba. I mean, I agree it's unfair because the Whitecaps are the only team to win on aggregate their series and get knocked out.
Well,
History.
not just win on wasn't it didn't they tie on aggregate, but they would have won on goal. They would have won on away goals rule.
No, because we won 3-0.
Yeah, it was 4-3. Right. All right. Sorry.
Yeah, so no, we won on aggregate and got kicked out. Jordi Alba said the playoff format was unfair. But then went on to say, I know it's been in place for years. It's not. It's only the second year of it. And it's only been done because of this Apple deal. And now Apple are going to be like, well, we don't have Messi. Who's going to give an actual flying fuck about these playoffs now? And just whilst all the momentum is going anyway, let's have a 2-week break between games.
It's brutal for them.
But Miami, I was thinking, I was going to throw the C word out in this, but I know it's frowned upon in Canada.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that.
So the 2 words I've got to describe this Miami loss: fuck 'em. After what they did to the Whitecaps, which they had every right to do, but still. Absolutely hilarious that they're out. And Atlanta deserved this 100%.
Was it a little bit weird that I'm forgetting his name now. Was it Arthur Blank, the owner of Atlanta?
Yeah.
Had like a whole box of his people like watching the game.
He was happy and celebrating.
He reminded me of one of your favorite words, cock a hoop.
He was very cock a hoop. And for a man that age, it's like it's hard to get that without a few pills here and there as well, I've got to say. But what was even funnier was the winning goal, because there's a Miami player down injured in the box, And the referee is in every right not to stop it if it's not a head injury.
He's not holding his head, right? It was
Yep.
a leg cramp or a leg muscle thing.
And
Yeah.
Miami defenders just switched off and they were like gesticulating to the referee. And then it's like, whoa, 3-2.
Well, and the thing that's been making the rounds, of course, is the equalizer from Miami, right? Where they score and then Guzan gets pushed into
Yeah,
the
the little
net.
push.
And then Suarez is like in his face.
Yeah. Like Guzan, what is he, 40, 41? Experienced veteran that's come in and has done a really good job with Atlanta. This is an Atlanta side that had to sell, well, they didn't have to, but they sold their leading scorer from last year.
Mm-hmm.
My Greek guy that I wanted to come here, that
Well,
in hindsight was never going to come here.
well, the other big narrative, or one of the other big narratives is right. Is Miami's coached by Tata Martino, right? Who won the MLS Cup with Atlanta in
Yes.
the inaugural season.
Yeah. I mean, just all round, this is one of the best MLS stories of the year for me. I love this. I'm not a big fan of Atlanta. I do love their strips, and I love what they've built there and the crowds that they get in. But, oh, this was great. And I would have loved to have seen the faces on Apple and MLS executives when this result started to come through.
Oh, yeah.
Talking of Tata Martino, he said he would not label this season a success. No success. No, he said. When one is eliminated here in the quarterfinals, no. It had good things. It had bad things.
Well, it's too bad he didn't mention qualification for the FIFA Club.
Yeah. They've won the Supporters' Shield. They're going to the Club World Cup that nobody gives a toss about next year.
LAFC won the Leagues Cup this year. They won it last year, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And they didn't win the US Open Cup either. That was LAFC.
Yeah.
Wonderful weekend, aside from the Whitecaps game.
Well, it's about it's similar to something we're going to talk about in the next part. But you know that everyone else in the rest of the league is just like, yes.
Yeah. I do not doubt for a minute that Messi is one of the best players that we've ever seen in the world.
Yep.
And we're genuinely fortunate to be watching him in the league that we cover. The publicity, I understand why, but for me, it's so much overkill that it switches me off Miami and him, and I genuinely hate them.
Yeah.
It's just everything is around him. And then you've got Don Garber at the start of the year having an attack on lazy journalists that only want to cover Messi. Have a look at your own fucking website and Apple TV, and it's Messi's face everywhere.
Yeah.
Messi's out. The Scottish Messi's out. For me, MLS playoffs, I don't really care. I might go to the final if it's in the West Coast, but yeah, it's going to kill my enthusiasm for it. Maybe I'll feel different in 2 weeks' time because I've got no other football to watch, but we'll see. But it's the end of the Whitecaps season. It's the end of us talking about it in the show. We'll be back next week and the future weeks with our deep dive into our end of season stuff, turning our attention to the Canadian Premier League next, and we'll be back chatting about that after this episode's song from our album of the month.
Hi, I'm Jay Herman, and you're listening to the AFTN Soccer Show.
Look out there, I-17, I'm fighting with beauty, if you know what I mean. Carefree as the morning, a fully open mind, carrying the glances and the leanings and the fancies of 100 like mine. Eagerly waiting at the starting post, stripping ourselves of the innocent
Welcome back to the AFTN Soccer Show on CITR Radio 101.9 FM. And kicking off this part, it's our song from our album of the month, Leicester band Prolapse, from their 1997 double album, The Italian Flag. That was track 3 on side 2 of the vinyl double album, or track 7 if you have the CD. Who has CDs these days? Me.
You
right
and me.
behind me.
Yeah, mine are in my office, just like yours.
The song there was Tunguska. So we are turning our attention now to the CPL, and the CPL season wrapped up on Saturday, the showcase game playing for the North Star Cup. The two old foes, Cavalry and Forge, battling it out for the third time or the fourth time in 6 years?
Third
time in 6 seasons. Forge, 4 CPL championships to their belt. Pacific, the only team to have lifted the CPL trophy. Not anymore. There's a new name on that North Star Cup, and it's Cavalry FC. Huge congratulations to Tommy Fielden, his team, all the Cavs fans. Oh, absolutely fantastic. Cock a hoop, you may say, Zach.
Yeah, very, very, very pleased. I mean, I think everyone at AFTN is pleased except for Felipe.
Yes, he travelled to the game. Felipe and Scott Strasser were there representing AFTN, so it was good.
It was good that I didn't go because actually my mother-in-law got out of the hospital on like Friday night, so it was good that I didn't go. I was able to help with getting things ready. And
yeah, but if you had gone, then you wouldn't have had to have bothered doing all that. That's a lazy me coming out.
Michael, you're hilarious. It was a great week of events. They had the gala for the Players of the Year award.
Yeah.
Obviously the Player of the Year award, they like a lot of leagues, they vote on them too early.
Well, I got to vote on the award, and I didn't like the short list because that was the one I was like, I have no idea who I'm going to vote for, and I genuinely cannot remember who I voted for.
Just sorry, which you only got to vote for one award?
Oh no, I got to vote on all of them, but that was the one that I really deliberated on. I was like, I don't know who to vote for in this because the names that were listed for me, none of them had a fantastic standout season, I felt, to be in like Player of the Year category.
Yeah.
I think it should have been Wachewski.
Did you vote for Gazdov?
For the goalkeeper?
Yeah.
No, I voted for Callum.
Okay, yeah. I that was the one where I was just like, I mean, they gave the Goalkeeper of the Year award to a kid who's totally improved from last year for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
But he ends up losing the starting job because of his own poor decision making, and then loses his job and doesn't play in the playoffs at all. Which again, I think that has to do with the timing of when these things are voted on.
I think the voting came out at the end of the regular season, so by that point, folk had known.
Well, okay. I know everyone will say, "Oh, you're just biased," but I really think Callum Irving deserved it. Like he led the league in so many stats, saves, penalty saves. He also, I think, was more valuable to his team than any of the other goalkeepers. I mean, without Callum Irving, Vancouver C is likely bottom of the table in 2024.
But yeah, the awards were good. There was Noonan's State of the League address on the Friday. We'll come to that in a little bit. And then the big final on Saturday. And Cavalry finally slayed the Dragon. 2-1 win over Forge in the end. And 2 players on the Cavalry team that's been with them from the very start in 2019. They both had big parts to play. Our good friend, goalkeeper Marco Carducci, and Sergio Camargo, who grabbed what proved to be the winning goal. And like in many ways, if we're writing a football movie, this team Cavalry, who keep getting beat in the big game by Forge, and then they eventually do it at home, and it's one of the OGs that gets the winning goal. I mean, that's a Hollywood ending for you. Forget your Wrexham FC.
Like we were talking pre-show, we hope that Scott Strasser gets to add a chapter to his book.
Yeah. Hope to catch up
Oh.
with Scott this coming week to get him to talk about the season and just he's been covering Cavalry for AFTN since 2019. So it's guys like that it means something special to as well. But yeah, I mean, it was a great final. Fantastic record crowd at Spruce Meadows as well of over 7,000. Delighted for Tommy. Happy for Jay Herdman going there on loan, getting championship medal. Let's talk though about the first goal.
Okay, before we do that, can we come back to the crowd for a second?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, obviously great that they sold it out. Really encouraging. I guess to me, a small disappointment is that could they, and this would have affected broadcast as well, but could they have not brought in some temporary stands like behind the benches? I know maybe not good for the horse jumping or whatever.
Well, you've got the hospitality there as well, so it would maybe have blocked that. Actually, talking about the broadcast, I thought it was like, obviously we watched Cavalry games over the course of the season. They needed a better broadcast setup than it was. I thought the players were too far away. The cameras
I said that.
zoomed out.
Yeah, there was like these are some weird angles. It feels like even more.
So I couldn't watch it live, so I just came home. I'd had it spoiled. I'd done so well to avoid the score. Oz Sweeney and his friends were watching it. I said, "Oh, do you want to come and watch?" I was like, "No, PVR in it. Don't want to know." I didn't. When I'm doing my broadcast, I tell folk, "Oh, get in touch with me on Twitter or my email, and we'll read your messages out." Said no email for the final. I'm shutting that down.
Yeah.
But then I had my other email that I forgot. I still get emails from Laura Armstrong on. And it was like cavalry. I just saw the first word cavalry, and I was like, no.
The same thing happened to me. Kirk and I had an event during the day, so we were avoiding it. And then I didn't tell Kirk this, but yeah, I saw the email from Laura and it said, as soon as I said Caps, I was like, shoot. I didn't read anything else. I was like, I want to see this play out. And so we because of that partly, but also for time's sake, we fast forwarded through most of the CBC broadcast, I was thankful that it was on CBC for that very fact. It was better to fast forward and stop and
see, I can do that with One Soccer because I've got it on Telus. Yeah, I ended up just watching the highlights on YouTube by that point, and I was like, oh, I've still got the PVR. I'll probably go back and watch it this week.
Yeah, but okay, let's get to the opening goal because there's a lot to talk about. I think with that,
it was a penalty on the field.
Yeah,
Wojciechowski brought down the box, and we were speaking before we recorded, and we hadn't spoken about this, but we're both on the same page. That was not a penalty.
Absolutely. This is never a penalty. Yeah. It at most, to me, you could say Toby is obstructed in the box, but obstruction in the box can be given as an indirect free kick. It's not, and to me,
that's very rare though that you see that given.
Right. But to me, I mean, obviously,
there's blocks in the box and obstruction in the box every single game. Right. It's not called.
And to me, this is obviously a case where the league suffers from not having VAR or VAR light.
Yeah.
Because what the referee I think sees is he sees Toby going down, and yes, does the player kind of run into him? Yes, but like Toby almost jumps into the player. Like Toby almost sees the guy moving towards him, or he's right there, and it's like he's like I think off his feet before the guy obstructs him.
Yeah.
And
it's to put the question in the referee's mind. So like you kind of initiate it and then go down, or you put your hands up, and the referee's then got the decision to make.
Yeah, and
as soon as you give the referee a decision to make and there's no VAR, it's like he's got to go with what he thinks he's seen.
Yeah, totally.
I don't blame the ref at all for giving it.
I don't think he got any help from the referee's assistant.
No, I definitely can't blame the ref for giving it.
No, but I agree with you. You can't blame the ref for doing it, but it's still the wrong call in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's a huge wrong call.
Totally, and that's you've already said we both wanted we both would have preferred Cavalry to win this game. But
yeah, because I was like at home when I was watching the highlights. I was talking to Caitlin during them. There's no interest at all in football in general. Never mind a CPL final, and I was like, that is not a penalty. I was like, don't mind though.
Yeah.
it goes back to the whole refereeing discussion, and like we're going to talk about Noonan's State of the League address in this part and into the next part, and he wasn't asked about VAR. Like that was my one big question that I wanted to know, and a couple of the other ones weren't asked either. Oh, I wish I could have been there to ask him some stuff. Maybe we'll get in touch actually with Laura. And we spoke to Noonan at the start of the year, so we'll maybe see if we can get a follow-up end of season thing for our kind of Christmas shows or whatever. Frustrating, but the referee in Canada, we've spoken a lot of times, it needs more investment. It needs improving. I'm not the only one to feel this way, and kind of benefited the team I wanted to win as well. But in the U Sports Women's Nationals, the refereeing in that across the days for all teams, and some of the decisions went UBC's way, and they maybe got some calls or non-calls that shouldn't have happened, but the refereeing was really poor, and it makes you a little concerned for the NSL about the standard as well that is then coming in, because you're adding another level of the pro game, but the support and the investment isn't there, and the money's not there to invest in it, and you wonder, well, how are these refs going to get better? Will the NSL have VAR? You have to kind of think probably not.
No, I can't see that happening. I don't know that this was in the highlights. I think Forge will feel hard done by in the second goal, because I think there's, again, it's not a for sure thing, but I think you see Becker going to the referee to talk to him, because I think Forge thinks there's a foul in the build-up to the goal. And again, not nearly as heinous as the penalty call, in my opinion, but still a little bit of where you'd love to have extra eyes just to confirm that it was all kind of on the up and up. Again, I'm not disappointed by the result.
No. And I've got to say, I think for the league, this was huge. It needed another team to win it that wasn't Forge. We said this on the show last week. I felt it'd have been better if it was Ottawa, so Forge weren't even in the final. To have another team win it, so you've got 3 winners over the 6 years, looks better than 5 wins for Forge over 6 years, because you've got to question then just the actual strength of the league. And like touching on that, we lost a coach today in the league.
Oh yeah,
Mora out at York United. Apparently, from an interview that he gave with a Mexican website, it was his decision, because he said they couldn't come to a financial agreement. But aside from that, he basically said he didn't feel the club and the league were growing in a way that matched his expectations and aspirations, which you could say is quite damning. But did he not know what he was coming into? What was he expecting this league to be over the space of 12 months?
Yeah, I'm wondering if that expectation and aspirations have more to do with his salary. Also, there have been reports earlier this year that came out that he was maybe being considered for the Chivas job.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
No, but
if he was, or if he got it, then to have that pedigree in the CPL, for one thing, is fantastic. But he didn't exactly set the header alight with York.
No, and that's the thing, is I think he played quite defensive football in the end. And it helped him, get to where they did, but not further.
They got a bit of a bump to start with after Nash left, but that's 3 managers at York and a mascot that has moved up to
R.I.P. Yorkie.
They've all moved on. Angus McNabb moved on as well. So a big turnover of staff and things there.
It will be interesting, because this was the kind of hire you thought, okay, the Mexican owners, they're bringing in their guy, and they brought in a fellow Mexican, right? And so it's interesting to see it end so quickly, and it will be interesting to see what their follow-up is, decision is on that. Yeah.
And had a good chat with Martin Nash about his time at York, Whitecaps game a few weeks ago, and he knew the writing was on the wall for him. I don't think anyone saw that his replacement would be out so quick.
Yeah.
Actually, talking about Martin Nash, he's been around the Whitecaps a lot during the run into the season and stuff. And obviously, he's probably looking for a new coaching job. I couldn't help but wonder, like Michael D'Agostino, I think has done enough to earn himself a head coaching job somewhere. Not sure about a vacancy in the CPL, maybe York now, but that'll be an interesting one at York as well. Will they go the Canadian route or the Mexican route, or different nationality altogether?
Marty also got one of those kind of invitations from Marsh, right? For
Yeah,
the recent game in Toronto against Panama.
but I was wondering if Vanni might be looking to maybe add him to the coaching staff.
Yeah,
It'd be a good hire.
That's a possibility. Yeah,
I'd be curious to catch up with Martin again now and see his thoughts, because we had quite a candid, it was an off the record chat. It was quite a candid chat just about his time there and how it all played out in various things. So I'd love to hear his thoughts now on how that is sitting for the club. But going back to the win for Cavalry, huge for the league. It had to get done. And that brings us on nicely to what we're going to talk about for the rest of this part and into the next part, which CPL Commissioner Martin Noonan gave his annual State of the League address. And it was an address of two halves. First 15 minutes was just him reading his basic comments on the season, what's to come. And then he took about 15 minutes of questions from the room as well. He says there's no better time to be invested in Canadian soccer and the CPL than now. With the rise of the league, the NSL, the World Cup coming, the national team being as strong as it's been for decades.
Mm-hmm.
So many talented young players coming through on the male and the female side. You've got a development pathway now with League One. You've got a strong college system, a strong youth system. And it is a fantastic time for Canadian soccer. Going back a little bit to what we were talking about last week, I fully appreciate that the CPL needs to be here and needs to survive. And I'm a firm supporter of the CPL. And I won't rehash what's about VFC, but it's like, we need this league to still be here after 2026.
Yep.
And I do have worries that beyond 2030, is this league sustainable? Just with the money that's coming in, and can they get the crowds in? Can they get the broadcasting things? Can they get eyeballs on it? Can they sell the players on that they need to sell? Can they start making it better on-field quality with improved talent? Some of the ex or near end of their time Canadian internationals, can they come back and play in the league? Like Daniil Henry, who incidentally has got a head coaching job this week. I don't know if you saw that.
I did not. Where?
In League One.
League One. Good for him.
But there was two big takeaways, I think, from stuff that Noonan was saying, which the league needs to improve the product and increase distribution. And you'll get no arguments from me in any of those, and especially the latter. And it's the thing that has not sat comfortably with me from the start. And One Soccer do a fantastic job. You might not like all the personalities on it, all the personalities behind the scenes and everything as well, but what they do for Canadian soccer is second to none.
Mm-hmm.
And more people should get a chance to see it. The CSB deal, we won't go into at this point. That isn't obviously ideal in helping everybody, and we won't rehash all the old arguments with that. But tied in with that CSB deal is One Soccer have the rights to the CPL, and they have the right to the national team and various competitions. So Noonan said that he and the league will not rest until the domestic game and the national teams can be as easily watched on TSN and Sportsnet, although he didn't mention them by name. He said the two main legacy broadcasters, so obviously we all know who it is, until they can be easily watched on that as foreign leagues. And he's spot on. He sadly wasn't asked, though, about next year's production.
Yeah.
No media pros moving on. And what does this mean for One Soccer? Who's going to be producing the games? Is it going to be local production? Are they able to get, and like the final was shown on CBC, are they looking to get stuff on that. It's all well and good getting One Soccer to be carried by like Bell and Rogers and all these people. But unless you're getting the games on other existing channels, it still won't necessarily get that many more eyeballs on the league because folk are still going to have to pay for One Soccer. And whereas I've spoke before, it's great on Telus. It's $5 a month. I can cancel at the end of the season and not renew it again until the new season gets underway. Not great for One Soccer, but great for my pocket. But you're still relying on folk to pay that. So they need to get these games on other channels as well as One Soccer.
Yeah, you're not wrong there at all. That's for sure. It will be interesting to see. I've asked that question throughout this season about what does next year look like in broadcast, and there hasn't been a definitive answer yet. Only
Folk
that
I've asked
they're
about
working at it.
Yeah, I was told announcements were imminent, and that was about a month ago.
Yeah. Well, there was a good announcement about the final, but yeah, next year needs to be addressed.
Yeah. Like you've got people like Alex, AGR.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he does so much hard work writing about the league. He's got his on-screen stuff that he does. And like I said, there's some personalities you might like, there's some you might not like, but they all have an important part to play in telling the story of Canadian soccer, just like we do, like all the podcasts do in this country.
Yeah.
It's like we all are needed. We all need to work together to grow the game. And One Soccer plays a huge part of that. But so is it getting on other channels for those eyeballs. You can't be what you can't see, is what has always been said in a player capacity. So, for example, people of colour, if they don't see players coming through and they're a young player, they don't have someone to look up to and say, oh, I can be like that player coming through. We spoke about that like with Jeevan Badwal in the South Asian community. In the women's game, you can't be what you can't see. Well, there's not a pro league. I can't be a professional footballer in my country. So that's changing. But likewise, as a fan, you can't be a fan if you can't see the product and make your own mind up if that's what you want to go out and see.
Yep. You're not wrong.
I rarely am, Zach. So you don't need to keep saying that. But we all know. Noonan said, out of the 112 games this regular season, 111 of them meant something.
It's true.
Yeah. And that in itself is fantastic. And there's not many leagues around the world that you're going to say that about.
No.
He had a little pop at the outdated away goals rule, so we can add him to the slew of managers, including Vanni Sartini, that think it's ridiculous and shouldn't be around. So please, Canada Soccer, listen to everyone and change this for next year.
Yeah, I've talked to some people who have maybe some influence on that and said this is, as much as you lobbied for, supposedly or reportedly or allegedly lobbied for these two-legged things. One, you need to get rid of that, and two, you need to get rid of the away goals rule. And the people I talked to were like, yeah, both those make sense.
Yeah. I've said it before, and I know it's done in other countries, and Germany has stuff like this as well. Just get the lower seed to host or the lower league to host. It gets a bit more complicated when it's like two MLS teams playing against each other or whatever, or two CPL teams. But get the lower league team to host, put funding into that, and help grow the game and grow fan bases around the country.
I don't know that that's financially viable, as we've talked about before
that's
in
the
our country.
Thing, yeah.
But I'm not opposed to the lower seed or lower league team hosting. But I think you and I, one thing we could agree on is I would love a public, transparent draw.
Oh, yes.
That would be the greatest thing that could happen, especially if it returned to single knockout and no.
Well, we had it the one year, and then it mysteriously changed the next year.
Yeah. No regional stuff, whatever. Just a straight draw.
The regional stuff I hate, but it makes total sense.
I fully understand it.
Like, TSS are drawn away to Halifax. I wouldn't mind that actually, but still, I mean that would be an absolute nightmare travel wise.
But that's the thing; they need to look at all the different elements, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because as you've told me in your role as communications officer for TSS, is if that happens, if TSS is drawn away to Halifax, Halifax has to fly them from Vancouver out to there,
Yes,
right?
they have to pay for everyone and pick
Right.
them up, and
Yeah. So
that in
as much
itself
as
is not ideal.
as much as it was difficult for TSS to fly in Valor or whatever,
Mhm.
right? It also is to some degree a burden for, let's say, Halifax, a CPL club, to fly in any club from
Mhm.
the other part of it. So all those things need to be looked at and evaluated on what makes the most financial sense when you're dealing with 3 or 4 different levels or divisions or whatever. But on a competitive side, single elimination, I think no more away goals rule. Well, if you're single elimination, then the away goals rule goes away anyways. I think there should be full extra time.
Yeah.
And then shootouts. Obviously, I don't think all those things are going to happen overnight.
No, I mean
But
the extra time thing across the board is changing. Like Provincial Cup got rid of it a couple of years ago. The college playoff or the college nationals that I was just doing, up until the bronze and the gold medal matchups, extra time was not in play, straight to penalties.
so in that scenario, Michael, is there a rationale for it in terms of player safety over a tournament in a short number of days, or like player health, or
That
like
probably does play into it because, like at my tournament, two of the teams, the two BC teams in the end, because of the different playoff system that I spoke about, they played 4 games in 4 days,
Yeah.
which
See,
is insane.
in a scenario like that, I don't. I'm more open to them
Yeah.
having an alternate
Yeah.
format.
But U Sports still has extra time and penalties.
Yeah.
And you could end up playing 3-3 or 3-4 at that as well.
Right, right. But when we're talking about the top level of football in our country,
Yes.
we're talking about the one cup that unites our country.
Yeah.
To
Should
me,
be extra time.
there should be
There'd
extra
be no
time.
away goals.
Yeah.
And I know the lower league hosting it, there's so many issues with that. But you look at TSS hosting Valor, what that occasion was. You look at San Laurent
Yeah.
hosting, and that amazing atmosphere. Actually, a bunch of the San Laurent players were actually playing for Montreal against UBC in the men's,
Which helped you
sports
because
final
in your
today.
commentary, because you knew them, yeah.
Oh no, that wasn't my one. That was
the
the
other
new
one.
sports one.
Oh, right, sorry.
Yeah, I had women's nationals, and it was a team from Laval who were in that, as well as a team from Laval in the women's U Sports final. So yeah, I mean, you look at like the hotbed that is Quebec,
Yeah.
and like the two teams in my tournament were both from Quebec. There was a Quebec team in both the U Sports finals today, and it's like they're not in the CPL, and we're going to talk about expansion in the next part. And surely, finally, if there's two teams coming in, one of them is going to be in Quebec. It has to be. There's
would be
all
ideal.
this talent that's going by the wayside there. But we'll get into that in the next part. Kind of tied in with that, though, I want to finish this part talking about something that Mark Noonan said about League One and the connection between CPL and League One Canada. Now, obviously, they're both owned by Canadian Soccer Business, but aside from that, I thought this was fascinating because I hadn't fully appreciated this. And you know me, I've done some digging after this. And I'm going to give you a fun little... So, Mark Noonan said that more than 60 players who played in the league in 2024, a third of all the players in the CPL in total had experience in League One before playing in the CPL. All I'll say about last week's chat is the point I made is I want to see more League One players come through in Vancouver and also at Pacific. So I was curious out of that, and this isn't to have a pop at VFC, how many VFC players do have League One experience? So if there was 60 for the whole league,
Yeah.
the 8 teams, that averages out at 7.5 per team. How many do you think VFC have that have League One
In
experience?
2024?
Yeah, from the current roster.
I don't know, because most of our best young players, like our 3 best young players, never had a chance of that because they were brought in so young. I don't know. Is it like 1 or 2, 3 tops?
No, this is what
0?
surprised me. There
Oh,
is 7. So
Oh,
just
7.
below the average. Now, I'm not sure if all of these fall into the 60 players that Noonan was talking about, because he was talking about players that's played. 2 of them didn't play this year, which was Joey Buchanan.
Oh,
But
right.
Big Nico Giantsopoulos played in League One before
Oh,
the CPL.
yeah,
Rocco Romeo,
right. For,
Anthony White,
for TFC Youth. Yeah. Okay.
Anthony White with TSS,
Yeah.
James Cameron, who I didn't think was very good in League One and then blew me away in the CPL.
Yeah.
Sebastian Jakowski.
That was the one I was thinking.
Yeah, he was with Varsity and Not So Mot, and Gabby Bitar.
Hmm.
So technically 5 players that played, although Anthony White played 1 game, but he still played. But 5 played for VFC that had League One experience and 7 altogether.
Hmm.
And obviously I would like that to be more, but we won't go into that
Well,
again.
and so look at so if you take those 7, Michael, and then you add in TJ and Grady, who never like
They never got the chance to play in League One.
they're like almost not too young for League One, but yeah,
Mhm.
they were unearthed as
Yeah,
team.
but then there's other players like Fiske and stuff who are too old for League One. They like predated League One, like Callum and Fiske and
Yeah. Well, especially League One BC.
yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just thought that was interesting, and I hope, like, I'm a sado. I'm going to look at all the clubs and see what players might have had the League One experience for them because I'm genuinely curious. I mean, you've got to think Forge is right up there and leading the way with all the
Yeah.
the connections there,
Team,
and
yeah.
also cavalry with Foothills and
Yes.
stuff. But yeah, I thought that was interesting, and I hope there is a closer connection between the two. And maybe that could mean some League One clubs stepping up and getting in the league. And we'll talk about that in the next part when we talk a little bit about expansion. And we'll get to some of the messages that we got about last week's show as well. And we'll be back with that after our second Britpop song.
Hi, I'm Tommy Wilden Jr., and you are listening to the AFTN Soccer Show.
I say your garden looks so pretty. Next day, they're digging for remains. So show me a big house in the country, and then tell me that we're all the same. Yeah. Oh, what a lovely day to drink some English tea. Talk about the weather. Well, isn't it lovely? What a splendid day to spend together. Yeah. We could take our time and drink some English, maybe. We could read the papers. Politicians and their sexual encounters, yeah. But if you don't feel very loyal, you can always read about a royal. Oh yeah. Oh, what a lovely day to drink some English tea.
Welcome back to the AFTN Soccer Show on CITR Radio, 101.9 FM. And kicking off this part, a song there for Cavalry FC manager Tommy Wheeldon Jr. from Oxfordshire in England. It's Thurman with their debut single that was re-released this week 30 years ago and entered the UK indie charts this coming week. The song, English Tea. I guess Tommy Wheeldon Jr., that could be one of his nicknames now, Mr. English Tea. And Thurman were a good band. They were a one-and-done band album-wise. They released the fantastic debut album, Lux, in 1995. Had some fantastic singles on it, Famous, She's a Man, this one, English Tea, and some of their songs on it and the singles that came out in 1995 had a bit of a kind of later's Beatles sound to them. So, fantastic band. Hope you enjoyed our second Britpop tune of the show. And I like my songs about tea.
Hmm.
Nirvana's Pennyroyal Tea, which I learned this week. The CD single for it was released the week that Kurt Cobain died. And I think he died the day off or the day after release. So all the copies were recalled.
You've taken us on this Kurt Cobain tangent. Did you see the weird quotes? I think it was Helen Mirren made some weird comment about Kurt Cobain in the last week or two about how she's so sad that he passed away when he did because he never got to experience life with like GPS or something. It was just like this is the weirdest thing. And I thought this is made up or this is some kind of AI thing or something. But then I saw someone report on it on a talk show or something. It was just the weirdest thing.
Wow.
Sorry, that's a crazy, ridiculous
No,
thing.
it's fine. It's a great story. I hope it's true. I will check that out. I'm sure other folk listening to this will as well. I've spoken before how Courtney Love, I had a big poster of her up in my bedroom in Scotland. I love Courtney Love's Hall. Really good band. So she was on a show that I watched in the UK, Never Mind the Buzzcocks. And wow, she's batshit crazy.
Oh,
But
wow.
this year, for Nutmeg magazine, a Scottish football magazine, Ryan Gauld wrote a couple of columns and we talked about them on the show. One of the things he revealed in that is him and his girlfriend are huge Nirvana fans. And he went down to Kurt Cobain's house and checked it all out in Seattle. I didn't have him down as like a Nirvana fan. That's it for the music chat. We'll get back to the football chat and just a little bit more coming from Mark Noonan's State of the League address and the juicy news really that came out of it, or expansion chat, which everyone has always, every single season and the off season and throughout the season, loves to talk about. But now we have seemingly firm confirmation, Zach, that there's going to be 2 new teams added to the CPL in 2026. And he listed them, keen to point out that they were in alphabetical order.
Yeah, that's legit. That's a good way to do it.
So, in alphabetical order, he mentioned Edmonton, Kelowna, Kitchener-Waterlooville, Laval, Quebec City, Saskatoon, Windsor, and several locations in the Greater Toronto area are amongst locations that are keen to get into the CPL, and it would appear 2 of those will be in 2026. Now, missing from that is Montreal, but I'm fine because Quebec City's in there and Laval's in there.
Laval is like suburban Montreal.
Yeah, close to Montreal. And Laval is an absolute hotbed.
I know all of our listeners are wondering if you know their distance from Thunder Bay.
Well, I can tell you what I learned from doing my commentary this week.
Oh, man.
Because during the commentary, I had a few guest people coming on to talk, and one of them was the Nomads de Montmorency athletic director, Dwayne John, who fascinatingly told me, and I find this fascinating, you might already know this, everyone else I've told about this doesn't. Did you know that in the Quebec educational system, it only goes up to grade 11?
I think I knew that when I was younger, but no, I didn't realize it was so.
So yeah, they graduate grade 11 and then they go to like polytechnics,
right,
to prepare them for university. So they're not allowed to go from high school into university. So the Quebec teams that were in the tournament I was doing in the CCAA were these polytechnic and colleges where it's 16, 17 and 18-year-old girls that are playing a high level of college soccer, getting more education and getting ready. So the Nomads team, there was 10 of them that are graduating at the end of this, and they won the gold medal. And some of them are going to NCAA and into U Sports and stuff. So that was fascinating. But the other thing he told me was about his journey to get to Squamish from Laval. And I think this puts into perspective the travel that we have in Canada
Yeah.
and CPL, NSL to come, college game. So their journey, they left on Monday at 9 a.m. Pacific time. They drove from Laval to Quebec City. They flew from Quebec City to Toronto. They had a stopover, a little bit, hour and a half or something. Flew from Toronto to Vancouver. They got into Vancouver in the early hours of Tuesday morning. They stayed at the hotel. They then had to get up early on Tuesday to drive to Squamish, an hour and a half drive. They then got on the training pitch for the first time on Tuesday afternoon, and their match was the first one on the Wednesday at 10 a.m.
Wow.
And then they went on to win the tournament. But
That's
that,
crazy.
just that travel, it makes it all worthwhile when you come away as a national champion and get a trophy and medals. But it just shows you what travel like the CPL and the NSL have.
Yeah.
I don't appreciate really how big Canada is really until I do traveling myself in it. But when you hear stories like that and you look at teams to come into the league, like you want to make it coast to coast, and we are that. And if I look at these teams, the two that jump out for me, Laval or Quebec City, one of them has to get in. And my heart says Edmonton, but my head says we should get into Saskatoon.
Edmonton's not ready.
Saskatoon for me to get another province in.
I agree with you in terms of Saskatoon and Quebec, like needing to be in the league, but like the provinces and those communities. I really, as much as I want another team in BC and I want Kelowna to come into the league, I think it would be a little bit disappointing from the broader the broader goals of the league to do that before those ones. I worry that Kelowna could come quicker because they've already done the CPL on tour there.
Yeah, which I forgot to mention that in the show last week. That was something else I didn't like. And I know that was out with VFC's hands and it's going to happen again this year. I just don't think that gives you a total indication, a one-off event as to can that be sustainable?
No, I mean, it's not nothing, but yeah, I don't think it's determinative.
I'll be honest. I don't want Kelowna to be one of these two teams coming in. A couple of reasons. I don't like this club's been owned, three clubs being owned by the same ownership group for one thing. But that aside,
I don't think.
Well, it would be part ownership, I think, with 6-5.
I've been asking, and I'm hearing less and less that it's 6-5.
Oh, in that case, I still don't think Kelowna should get in the next lot, but I'm a bit more open to that.
To me, it would be more. For 6-5 not to be involved would be, again, for the betterment of the league as a whole.
Yeah.
Now there are, I think I heard something about certain scenarios which would, could make things different in one way, shape, or form that maybe we could talk about in further detail if they ever became realities down the road. But still, I still don't think it would not be my preference for 6-5 to be involved, again, for the overall health of the league and just out of the ideal way I think things should be done.
I don't think there should be a third team in BC as well before you're in other provinces. And for that reason as well, I really would rule out the Greater Toronto area and maybe just Ontario in general. The only thing
Noonan talked about how significant rivalry are, and that's easier to build maybe when you're close like that.
Absolutely.
Toronto, but
and like you're not wrong. But even in League One Ontario, there's some really fierce rivalries there, and there's some clubs that genuinely hate each other.
And he addressed that, didn't he? Didn't someone ask him if these clubs, if these new clubs would be brand new or they could be from different levels? And didn't he sort of say, I think if I can remember correctly, didn't he sort of say they're open to that?
Yeah, I've got
anything.
Got that here. Wait till I find it. Yeah, he said it would be great if they could elevate League One clubs to the CPL.
Right.
But the market has to be big enough to support the CPL.
Yes.
And the infrastructure has to be there. And that then led to him talking about investment by cities into building stadiums
Right.
and all of that as well. But he said it needs to be the right conditions to expand. And you have to know that you're definitely going to not necessarily be the only show in town, but you want to be able to draw fans. And there's so much going on in Ontario. There's so much going on in BC.
I believe the specific example he used was Peterborough, saying, look, there's some great things happening in Peterborough. That would be a place that maybe could, because of those good things, could be a side that does go from League One Ontario into CPL.
He mentioned Simcoe.
Maybe it was Simcoe. Maybe
it was Simcoe County, yeah.
Simcoe County. But then he followed that up immediately by saying, you need the population base to make it viable, basically.
Well,
which makes Simcoe not viable in that sense.
Because if you look at it in other ways, like you look at the clubs that Simcoe, CS Saint Laurent, TSS, the 3 League One teams in the Canadian Championship this year that all did well. They've got fan bases, they've got avid support. TSS, I'd love to see them in the CPL. Would it be sustainable? Another team here? No. You would not be getting the crowds in that you need. It would be maybe VFC level crowds, and even that, I'm not 100% sure that we could get up into those kind of figures. Swan Guard would kind of help if that is available. That's a discussion for another show. But you're too close to the big show in town, the Whitecaps. And you'd always be fighting against that. And for the folk that don't want to watch the Whitecaps and want the lower level experience, you're then fighting against VFC for the same kind of market. So that would never work. Yeah, I would only, short term. I would only change that to say the Canadian experience. But anyways, the original plan, the original long-term plan was a CPL club on my side of the river, and a CPL club on your side of the river. Which for rivalry would be fantastic. Like, genuinely, if TSS got in, the rivalry with Vancouver FC would be immense. Right. I think I've said this before, but all I know is that the plans for that, the plans for some of the ideals ways that play that to play out have changed. Like some of the factors have shifted, if you will, and so that won't play out the way I was. Well, and it's like everyone underdog wants Swan Guard, and there isn't another option. Well, without going into all the details, I mean, we've both heard rumors over the years of stadiums getting built in various places. Exactly. This side of the river. The option I know that was explored to certain levels, did not involve Swan Guard. No, the one I'd always heard about was Hastings Park, but that's gone quiet for years. And rivalries would be huge if you added in a Quebec team. And like I love Quebec City. I went there in the 90s. It was one of the favorite places I've actually been in Canada, despite the fact that they spoke even less English there than they did when I was in Montreal. They're very, very adamant that no, we want to make sure that we are honouring our heritage and we are not speaking English. The taxi driver that took me to the hotel was like, no English. So it's like, fine, no tip. So genuinely, it's what I did. It's like, okay, I think Laval, because of everything that's going on in the college scene there, would be huge to get in. Yeah. Although a trip to Quebec City would be lovely. It's only 2.5 hours away, I've learned, from Laval, so there you go. Yeah. You also then have that rivalry with Ottawa. Obviously, I'd love them to get into the Maritimes, but it's like baby steps and all of that. So from those cities, for me... They're in the Maritimes. It's called Halifax, but you mean more... Oh, sorry, expand into the Maritimes. Sorry, okay. And the Quebec team will help Halifax. I think that would be great. But I think that would be a kind of rivalry there. Rivalry, yeah. Saskatoon coming in. Interesting, Regina's kind of not mentioned, but just Saskatoon. Well, the problem with that, so the language I've heard around these expansion opportunities, Michael, is I've heard them described as either hot or cold. So, for example, FC Edmonton, Edmonton is one I think that I've heard described as cold. Right? It's not the one that's the league really want them in, but it's others. Are the other factors there?
Others, again, have been described as hot. Well, I won't name those ones, but the one that I don't think I heard either way, which I'm kind of presuming is cold, would be Saskatoon, and that is because there's this outstanding, I believe outstanding kind of litigation between Joe Beelan and, or I don't know if it just died,
Yeah.
but anyways, there's some either unresolved issues or there are some things happening with municipal governments that make it hard to do what they wanted stadium wise. And so I don't know factually that Saskatoon is a cold option at the moment, but unfortunately, I think it might be.
I mean, Windsor, close to Detroit. We know Detroit City's got the passionate fans there.
But it's the Clanahan factor, right?
Clanahan's got the rights to that. So, I mean, does that put them high up the pecking order?
Again, I can't remember what word I used to describe that one, but that one you have to think has some kind of in the same way that you knew an MLS team was going into Miami.
Yeah, the Beckham effect.
Yeah,
David Clanahan is our David Beckham.
Yeah, let's not maybe equate it in that strong way. I'm sorry for bringing that up, I guess. But no, you have to think that there's a greater chance of that happening sooner rather than later because of his involvement in the league.
Because he's had it for a few years now.
Yeah. I mean, again, going back to the Beckham thing, much shorter than it took Beckham to get to
yes.
But yeah.
Can we get the Canadian Messi there? Who would be the Canadian Messi?
No, let's not talk about that.
I mean, let's do of those cities, what two would you love in and what two do you think would be in?
Okay, we kind of covered this a little bit, but I think for the betterment of the league, I would want Quebec City and Saskatoon. I think for myself personally, this is going to be awkward, but just because I could drive to them, I would probably want Kelowna and Edmonton because they're places I could drive quite easily.
Yeah.
Again, it's selfish. What do I think will happen? I think you're more looking at like Windsor and GTA or Windsor and Quebec.
I genuinely would be very disappointed if they go into the GTA. But the league does need to expand and it needs more teams. So I guess you take whoever wants to pony up the money just now. And I mean, ultimately, it's a lot of money. You're going to lose money. You need to be prepared to do that. And if it's only folk in the GTA that are prepared to do it, then so be it. I'd love to see a League One club step up, whether it's like CS Saint Laurent in Quebec, or Simcoe, or Oakville, who I believe met with somebody recently.
Is there currently a League One BC side in Kitchener-Waterloo?
I don't know if there is. I remember way back in the day there was KW United.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. Yeah, okay.
I went down and watched them win the PDL Championship down at Starfire in Seattle. And I'm not as familiar with League One Ontario as I was due to all the expansion and then switching into the two leagues and everything as well. So
I think it's Kitchener-Waterloo, I think, is a community that would be great for it. It's just, again, when is the right time? And and saying that, and again, making a bit of an MLS comparison. Thank you, sir. And making a bit. You hope they don't become like a Sacramento.
Yeah, it's interesting. Hopefully, we will get those announcements sooner rather than later, so the teams have a proper time to prepare and get ready for that inaugural season. Because the teams coming in have been rushed. Even Vancouver FC had to kind of rush in to take over from Edmonton. Pacific's one was quite a short build-up as well. Ottawa, we saw with that as well. So it would be nice if they could get announced next year early, and then you've got over a year to get everything set up.
And Noonan talked about that, right? Like they kind of ramp. And we've talked in previous episodes about how it feels like the NSL clubs, the ramps are, it feels like it's going to be very hard for them to take off with the little bit of runway that they have for this. So yeah, you hope for this next chapter of the CPL that they can give them as much leadway as possible.
Exciting times as always in Canadian soccer. And yeah, 2026 coming, the league certainly want to capitalise on that. Because the interesting thing, I guess, is will they be playing games over 2026, which MLS doesn't look like they're going to, and they're going to have to really. But it's a way maybe to showcase the league as well.
Yeah. Yeah. The CPL and tour thing will be interesting where it goes next year. And is that a determining factor in the timeline and all this? Again, like we talked about with Kelowna, hopefully, again, for the betterment league, hopefully that isn't the determinant factor, but yeah.
That's it for the stuff coming out of Mark Noonan's State of the League address. Last bit for the show, football chat wise, is just a little bit of a follow up to our show last week, where we had what Greg Petrie describes as a lengthy VFC season in review podcast, and had some feedback from it. And maybe not surprisingly to Zach, most of it, in fact, all the feedback I had, to be brutally honest, was like backing up stuff that I said. Now, we did talk about this though, and you said the folk that listen to the podcast aren't really going to be the folk that are maybe the CPL supporters are going to be coming out to VFC, because a lot of it's Whitecaps fans, and it's maybe not the market. It should be the market though, because anyone that listens to this podcast or any of the football podcasts are ideally the people that all the CPL teams should be trying to attract in the door, because that's the football-loving public. But I had feedback from some folk that didn't want their stuff read out, or didn't want it read out with their name. They just wanted to get in touch. Some folk that's involved in the local soccer scene as well. Someone that I was chatting to at Nationals in Squamish that doesn't even have a horse in the race because they're involved in the women's side, said that there was things that needed to be said. And I know you were at a VFC event on Thursday where you did get the opposite feedback.
Yeah, I mean,
as you would.
Not just there, but yeah, there's people who, as much as they value the discussion and some parts of it, maybe more than others. Yeah, I mean, there's people who obviously maybe feel that your perspective of the club tends to be more on the negative side, but we're a podcast that sometimes over the years have had people who tend to have negative views of local football clubs, and people like that or don't like that. Also people who, just question like, okay, this is one of their primary places for getting VFC information or hearing it talked about. So what does that mean for them listening going forward, right? Like, but I mean, that's part of life in these kinds of things.
And I genuinely would love to hear from these people as well. Like, let us know, like what we said last week. If what I'm saying, if you're like, that's totally wrong, you're not getting this or that, please do get in touch with us. We did get an email, as I mentioned, from Greg Petrie. I'll maybe summarize some of this because it's quite a long email. So he makes 4 to 5 points, just coming out of what we're discussing. So the first one, he kind of makes a point that, because I was trying to say, or you were actually saying, Zach, that maybe some of the veteran players that's come in this year to the club maybe didn't have the right attitude and work rate required. And he said, like, without pointing fingers at anyone in specific, back in the old WFC2 days, that was a thing that was leveled at a lot of those players as well. So maybe it is just an attitude of that maybe generation of BC soccer talent.
So Greg's point here is that there's some players who were on both the original WFC2 and are on VFC who didn't work as hard as they could have. So who are those players though? Because I was trying to think of this. Because one is Ben Fisk.
I don't.
Callum Irving. He was in there.
Oh, because they went with WFC2. I know he put that in his email, but I don't think there's any of those players. I think he was meaning that there was that attitude levied at those players back then, but those players aren't on VFC.
That's what I was wondering.
Caden Chung is maybe the only one, but Caden had a great attitude. He was never one of the players that anything was leveled.
And he's been a standout in his time in the CPL, including earning a move to MLS, where obviously things didn't work out. But
there definitely were Whitecaps players in the past that came from the youth ranks that did get that attitude and work rate thing leveled at them. Maybe it is a BC thing. And maybe it's just that generation, because the young ones aren't. Like a Grady, a TJ and stuff. It's like their attitude is spot on.
Okay, just like Greg doesn't want to name players, I also in this moment won't name players who I think fit his description here. But again, this is not rocket science.
Yeah.
You can deduce. I mean, the most significant culprit is probably the easiest to deduce, and I won't even name drop that person. But yeah.
Next point, I know you won't agree with this, and you might not want to even comment on this one, but he says, related, it's interesting to watch that Vancouver FC have followed the Whitecaps path of not playing local talent and then using the excuse of, well, maybe they're not good enough, while not really giving them a chance. I honestly don't know how many League One or VMSL players could play for VFC, but they don't really seem interested in finding out either. I do wonder if we'll start to see even fewer minutes for younger players as the team attempts to win now, even if that's just make the playoffs, which is another very Whitecaps move. I don't think the club's going to move away anytime soon from the young player philosophy that they've got, in part because there is the under 21 minutes. But can you win with young players? Yeah. Can you win just with young players? Again, possibly, yeah, but it is a mix. And we spoke on the show last week, the average age of the squad is 25. But, I mean, we won't rehash everything that we said last week, but I feel there are players locally that are good enough to play for VFC. And I look at some of the players that's been in that roster in years 1 and years 2, and I have to say to myself, can they have done any worse? And we'll never know.
I think all I'll say about this is Grady McDonald, TJ Tahid, James Cameron, and Mateo Capania. I think they are playing young talents. Now, did they play those young talents enough? That's obviously debatable. And the whole his quoting of the win now mentality that's actually, if you listen to what Rob Friend said in the end of season press or media availability, he's saying that there's a bigger emphasis on building the winning culture in addition to always trying to bring through young talented players. So it's actually really a balanced approach as opposed to some kind of shift of win now. I think maybe the win now came from something Rob said maybe about there's more pressure to win the longer the.
Well, he was also pointing out that they're not like clubs like Cavalry and Forge, that they've basically from the start said, no, we're about winning, we're about getting trophies, we're about getting to the big show, taking part on the international stage in CONCACAF, and you just have to sit down and chat to Tommy and Bobby, and you know that drives them so much. And we've spoke before though as well that they've already had a young talented group to kind of build from. I was speaking to somebody the other day who said one of the big missteps in that regard for VFC was they really should have had a close working relationship with Surrey United from the start. Because when you look at a lot of the college talent in Canada West, so many of them come through Surrey United on the male and female side.
I don't know to what degree or to what level, but they have worked with Surrey United. I mean, the Surrey United hosted combines for them and player gatherings in the build up to the inaugural year. I remember walking into the door of the clubhouse there and getting to chat with Jeff Clark, who was there hosting.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I think the person I was speaking to was had been more hoping that it might have been an official / unofficial academy for the team and like a pipeline of talent. But until you had a U19 team set up or a League One team, you don't have anywhere to play that pipeline of talent, and they're still going to go off to the college game. Third point from Greg, and this one I will summarise a bit. It's about the attendance problem, and this is a point I made. Like, Greg is a long-time Whitecap supporter. He was there in the USL days, for people that don't know. He goes to watch WFC too. I've bumped into my games this year. He says, I don't think there's an easy solution to the attendance problem because I don't think there's a demand for soccer at that level. And I I wish there was, and I just don't see that there is. Now, he cites that the Whitecaps would draw 45,000 in the USL, and that was with no competition in town. Greg feels that VFC's best hope might be to follow the Vancouver Canadians' path. And I know this might be something you do agree with, Zach, and the club have kind of talked about trying to find the right game day experience. And it's like, maybe from a supporter's point of view, this might not be what you want from the fans in attendance. But if 90% of the fans are there for a beer, a hot dog, the game day experience, that's what the Canadians do. That's kind of what the Giants do a little bit as well, but to a lesser extent. But so many folk talk about, the Canadians is the best sporting atmosphere in the city, and to get out to that, because they're not there for the sport.
Mhm.
They're there for the entertainment factor. And you know how much I hate that, and that doesn't sit comfortable with me. But that might be the way in for the club to do that, and then try and win them over with the sporting aspect.
Yeah, I think the state of the stadium after phase one, I think the owners would say, is holding them back in terms of that, right? I mean, I think we talked about this earlier in the year when I first finally got to go there and experience it more fully. But I mean, you just look at Atco Field from the final this year, and you look at the one stand that's built on the front of that building or whatever, and then you have the main stand, and you have the grassy knoll and the setup over there. But that stand that does have a roof on it, it is the exact same as what's at the Langley Event Center at Willoughby. It's just covered, so you don't see the scaffolding or whatever. But when you're in it, or when you're walking into it and going up the steps, you see like, oh, this is all scaffolding that's just covered by, not tarp, but whatever the material is, right?
It looks better on TV than in person.
It looks like a proper stadium, but it's really just made to appear much, much nicer on TV. And again, they have the significant addition of a roof to that structure. So the stadium is one of the things that is holding things back, I think, in terms of creating that space that people want to be at and enjoy, and will come even, despite the results or the weather or whatever kind of things. So, and that they're like, the owners and the stewards of the club are hyper aware of that and are continuing to work at that.
Oh yeah, they have been for even before season one got underway.
And they've spoken at some of these recent gatherings of their commitment to being at that site and to working and doing all that they can, and inviting the fans and supporters of the club to join them in that journey of encouraging the municipality to finish the stadium that's started and half done there. So I think in one sense, I kind of agree with Greg here that as you improve the stadium, you'll be able to improve that kind of making it a special place to be, no matter all the other things going on. Which again, I'm with you. To me, it's about the football, not the quote unquote sports entertainment side of things. But
that might be the way in, and then you win them over with the game on the pitch, and they want to keep coming back. It goes back to what we say about the Whitecaps: send them home happy, and they want to come back. I like Greg's honest enough to admit he's a Whitecaps fan, and first and foremost, he'll go and do that. He's got other hobbies, and most of them seem to be emailing me long emails. And the number of free weekends when VFC is a viable option is limited for him. And that's the problem in the summer, just in general here. It's like, it's such a wonderful place to be when the weather's nice, that going and taking in a sporting event of any kind isn't necessarily top of people's thing. Going about the stadium as well, he does say something which we won't go too much into, but this is how I feel as well. He says, I dislike stadiums being funded by governments. And if VFC wants improvements to it, they should pay for it themselves. Now, it's slightly different with VFC, I would say, because it's on Langley Township property and they've got plans for the whole event centre. But I feel like this for Vancouver Rise with Swangard. If you want to be at Swangard and you want to make those changes, you pony up the money. And then you can like make your demands and kick out clubs like TSS if that's what you want to do and have exclusivity. But if you're getting money funded from the city, you don't have the same sway in my mind to make those demands, which has nothing to do with VFC. I just want to mention that just now. But I mean, we spoke last week. There's going to be pressure, hopefully, to get that done, and we'll kind of see where that goes. Last point from Greg. Does VFC actually know what their community is? Because I always get the feeling they don't want to be where they are. At the time of expansion, they talked about focusing on the south of the river and out in the valley, which made sense, and that is where they are. But they named it Vancouver, and we won't go into all that again. And because pre-season in the first year, they played it in all the lower mainland municipalities, like in Richmond and in
North Van,
and they did have a game in Surrey.
Yeah.
That it was trying to be. I mean, I felt in year one they were trying to be too much to too many people.
Yeah, and I think that's totally valid of what happened in year one. They cast the net wide, and you could say that made it less engaging for the people right directly in Langley.
Yeah,
and I think they've
been way better in year two in that regard.
Yeah, and they've also talked about going forward how they want to do that. They brought in this gentleman who
Bill Cooper.
Yeah, I didn't get to meet him, but I was in the same room as him the other day, and who apparently that'll be one of his kind of big focuses is further engaging with the community in Langley to make them feel more like help them know about the club more and inviting them into making it their team and stuff. So
I hope that works. I think that's what they need to do.
Yeah, and again, there's larger conversations that we've already had about this that we won't rehash now, but I think Vancouver FC is they've said now publicly multiple times in the last few weeks that they're going to be in Langley. Their goal is to be in Langley long term, and yeah.
Greg's last point is something that pisses me off as well. They keep showing Vancouver on One Soccer when like downtown Vancouver and like Stanley Park and stuff, and it's like that isn't helping things for the folk here that are already like, oh, you're not in Vancouver and blah blah blah.
But again, they do that for every sports thing. In
I know
city.
It annoys me.
It does like when whatever when the Giants or the Jets are playing, they show Manhattan.
Oh yeah,
the stadiums in New Jersey.
It's like no one can actually understand what there's somewhere else apart from that big city.
I don't love it either. But again, it's that I guess that part's not for me anyways. So yeah.
Yes, that's true. You're at the games. So that is it for our VFC, our CPL chat. It's not it for the show. It's time for this episode's wavelength, and I'm excited because it's friends of the show from Newport in Wales, Goldie Looking Chain. It's been a few years since they released a football song, but they released one this week, and it's all about wearing a full kit. Your jersey, your shorts, your socks, everywhere you go in your day-to-day routine, whether it's shopping, whether it's going to the pub, whether it's even going to the dentist. This is Goldie Looking Chain, Full Kit.
In a day when I was just a kid, I wanted a full kit made by Real Madrid. Mom couldn't afford it, but now I'm living the dream, cause I got more kits than the whole football team. Puerto, Celtic, Paris, Saint-Germain, I wear a full kit with a Goldie Looking Chain. I'm not the only one out there, there's others like me who wear a full kit just to watch the TV.
Full kit, yeah, you know it. Wear it every day, wear it home and away. Full kit, my full-time outfit. Wear it every day, even though I don't play.
Throw in, goal kick, red card, penalty. Kissing the badge when I walk in LD. I wear my soccer kit all the time, playing a false nine in the checkout line.
Can't do keep-ups, can't hit the band door. Just love the feel of the polyester. Keep people think I'm cool. I'm setting trends, but it's mainly other men without girlfriends.
Get my hair cut like I'm in the 3rd division. I can argue any offside decision. Don't really know the rules, don't support the club, but I still talk shit drinking Carling in a pub.
So I'll have a few pints in the afternoons with my half-kit mates down in Wetherspoons. I won't have many, I'll just have a few, cause people keep thinking we're on a stag do.
Full kit, yeah, you know it. Wear it every day, wear it home and away. Full kit, my full-time outfit. Wear it every day, even though I don't play.
I tried Cricket White's helmet and the pads, but it didn't feel the same hanging out with the lads. When you go somewhere posh, you wear a tux. I wear soccer kits from the World Cup.
Someone stepped on my foot when I was at the bar, rolled round on the floor like I was Neymar. Playing on the diddlers, I won £4, did the length of the pub on my knees doing a skid.
Shin guards making me look sporty. It don't matter that I'm way over 40. It's an important part of my personality. In a full kit, express my identity. Wear it every day, you might never understand. Got initials on my coat, down a captain's armband. Got a full strip and a chain made of gold, but my biggest problem is my legs are always cold.
Full kit, yeah, you know it. Wear it every day, wear it home and away. Full kit, my full-time outfit. Wear it every day, even though I don't play.
My missus is so understanding, she'll let me wear a kit with any kind of branding. I can tell that she really loves me, cause tonight she's dressing like a referee in the bedroom.
Just wearing the clothes I love, accessorizing with studs and goldie gloves. You might laugh, but I don't give a shit when you see me down Tesco's in a full kit.
And I wore it,
A Chepstow racetrack,
and I wore it,
It worked till they gave me the sack.
and I wore it,
When my gran got cremated.
wore it,
When my missus got impregnated.
and I wore it,
Every time I go swimming,
and I wear it.
even if I went on loose women. I wear my soccer kit Monday to Fridays, and I chills all weekend in my PJs.
Full kit, yeah, you knows it. Wear it every day, wear it home and away. Full kit, my full-time outfit. Wear it every day, even though I don't play.
I loves wearing a full kit. The great thing about it is, like, it gives people something to get you on special occasions like birthdays. I wears mine at a Rotary Club. Sometimes I even cuts holes out of the back of my socks. I does that cupping on the back and all. I've made my own Mbappe mask, right, down a cafe. The professionals wear a GPS tracker, but I don't do that. I just wears a sports bra. You guess like jogger's nipple, and you ain't even done any jogging. I absolutely love Puma Kings. Alright, I mean, like, I wouldn't be seen dead with a pair of Reeboks. No chance, mate. Like, I liked it back in the day when you could get up in, but you don't need that anymore. Oh, sometimes I rub deep heat on myself. Do you remember Gareth Bale? Yeah, he was good, wasn't he? Doing all that running and all that.
Gaudy looking chain, full kit. Really surprised didn't call it Full Kit Wanker, but there we go. It's a fun video as well, as you can check that out on YouTube and get the song in all the usual places. Go the GLC. That is it for the show. We're going to do our goodbyes, or this could be our 1 hour political podcast, because I drove up to Squamish on Tuesday, and before I left, I'd seen how the election result was going. An hour later, got to the hotel, and it's like, oh boy.
Yeah.
But in saying that, I said to you, I thought Trump would win. I said to my wife, I thought Trump would win. And I think so much of it is people are in both sides. You're in your bubble that you only read the news and you only see the talking heads of what you want to hear. So you're like, oh, my person's doing well. Oh, I'm only seeing positive things about this candidate and negative things about the other one. And then the result happens and you're shocked.
I'm a little surprised that he won and won so handily.
It's interesting from a football sense to kind of keep it to that, in that a lot of folk when he was president before, Southsiders, Range City, others, refused to travel to the States for away games.
Oh, yeah.
And then COVID hit, and then folk were like desperate to get back to away games. And then obviously it was a change of president, and folk have enjoyed the away games of late. So I do wonder again if this will sort of hit the travelling support of Whitecaps and other like Canadian fans for the MLS games going forward, for like Canadian games played down there or whatever.
Earlier I mentioned, don't let me forget to talk about toilet paper.
Yeah.
So
does this tie in with Trump?
So, like I said, my mother-in-law spent a significant amount of time in hospital recently, and I don't know if this is from a roommate in the hospital or from a neighbor just after she got back from the hospital the other day. But I think it's from someone at the hospital. She received not a full roll. I wish
I have no idea where this is going.
I wish we were on YouTube for this, Michael. Someone gave her some toilet paper.
That is superb.
And on this toilet paper,
take a screen grab of this.
On the toilet paper is the face of Donald Trump puckering up to like kiss someone or something. And it's just toilet paper that has that all over it.
Oh wow. Is it soft? It looks a bit rough.
Yeah, it's a little more, I mean, like you might expect from Donald Trump, it's a little more rough, yeah.
Something that was doing the rounds in amongst my UK Twitter folk, and then they were speaking about this on the Sloping Pitch podcast that I always love and plug. Did you know Donald Trump played football? He was a goalkeeper, and he made 6 appearances for Wolves under-17 side in goal while his dad was serving at the nearby army base.
I don't believe that. Really?
Apparently, it was in Shoot magazine, unless it's all been like mocked up, but it doesn't seem to be. It's very fitting though. It's Wolves because the colour of their jersey kind of matches the colour of his face, so that there's that. But apparently, he also had a racehorse called Molyneux something, named after.
Speaking of Wolves, I'm sure you've seen it on the broadcast. It's just tying to the CPL final. There's a Wolves banner that hangs at their matches, and on the bottom it's like Wolves of Calgary Supporter Club, and at the bottom it says love. There's like a love heart calves or something on the bottom. It's so always been so weird to me to see that yellow banner hanging at Spruce Meadows.
One other football related thing, which I didn't know this, but I learned this from the Sloping Pitch podcast. Trump and Giovanni Infantino are good friends. And Trump actually introduced Infantino to Mohammed bin Salman.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I knew that.
And obviously, Saudi now has so much input into future things that's coming up by FIFA. Of course, the real bad thing about Trump getting in is he is going to be the face of World Cup 2026.
Oh, yeah.
And before they had the Muslim travel ban under him, what will that mean for Muslim footballers coming to try and play in the country? Or has he given assurances to his good friend Gianni? I think I call him Giovanni there, but Gianni Infantino about
they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop teams coming in for the World Cup. Like that's not going to happen.
You would hope not.
No,
like right now, I think anything's on the table. I don't know what to expect.
No, that's not one of them. To go away from the football thing for a minute, if I can, it seems so strange to me now that this is the reality, because I don't think we talked about this before, or I just can't remember that we did, but that you're now going to have you now have this president of the United States who, because the man has returned, this person has returned to become the president. Now they're saying those criminal trials.
Oh, they're all getting, they're getting dropped already.
Now I've heard from someone that said, "Oh, the New York stuff is different because it's federal courts that will drop stuff, but the state ones will still do like."
But can't he just pardon himself anyway?
Well, that's the thing. I think he can. Which it just It just seems so strange.
I know it's baffling. I don't know if you saw this. Someone sent me this, but I'd seen it before anyway. The Scottish First Minister in the Scottish Parliament said, "I'd just like to send my congratulations to convicted felon Donald Trump and getting elected."
Well, did you see the opening to Saturday Night Live?
No,
because he loves when people, or it appears as though he loves when people speak well of him or whatever. So they did this whole gag where they're just like, the election happened this week and many people were disappointed, blah, blah, blah. But then they're like, but none of us, we all love you, Donald Trump. Like, we voted for you. It was kind of, it was really, really funny.
my biggest hope in all of this is finally Oregon will secede from the US, join Canada, and I can go and immigrate down there.
Yeah, it's not happening.
I've got my plans for League One Oregon. I've talked about Newport County. Just up from that is a place already called Lincoln City,
yeah,
named after the football team. So we've got all these things. And there's Bandon, whereas there is an English football team called Brandon United. So it's close. So I could get this to work.
Oh my.
Cannon Beach, the Gunners, they're Cannons.
There you go.
Got it all set. So if you're listening in Oregon, please, and I'll come and be your president.
Will we be the commissioner of the league?
Commissioner, oh yeah. When I say president, I don't mean of Oregon. I just mean of the football league. Don't want to be president down there.
Oh my.
But no, it's going to be interesting. It could affect all of us travel-wise or whatever.
Yeah,
and
actually,
let's see how it does affect football-wise as well.
I'm hoping to have some significant travel, if not in, then at least through the US in 2025. So I hope this doesn't mess it up.
Ooh. Well, on that bombshell, we'll be back with another episode soon. Until then, thanks for listening. Give Zach a follow, Zachary AM on Twitter, AFTN Canada for me, AFTN Soccer on Instagram. We'll be back with some more Whitecaps end of season discussions next week and some interviews as well. Until then, thanks for listening. Take care. Mon the Caps. And well done, UBC and the Capilano Blues. Bye, everybody.
Going to your first match is an experience you never forget. The atmosphere of what's going on around the pitch looks beautiful, and you always look and go, wow, I'd love to play here one day. If you get the bug, it's going to stay with you for life.
10 minutes left. Yeah, but there's still some time. It's not the final score. We need more than the numbers we're given. Show us you live and breathe the game. You're more than a name. That's what we came for. We can bring you more than the score. Every story. Let's take this thing off of the field into the real world, away from the numbers, away from the numbers.